We will have you come forward.
Thank you, Deborah. For those who haven't met me, my name is Ann McNamara. I'm the senior planner with the city. As Deborah mentioned, Commissioner Shepard mentioned, this is a conditional use permit for animals on this property on 789 East, 80 North. The applicant would like to place 6 goats on the northern side of their property to maintain the overgrown grass. This is a permissible use under conditional uses in the code, and the only potential additional conditions that staff would recommend would be those pertaining to nuisance abatement and screening from adjacent properties, but based on the surrounding uses, we don't anticipate any issues on that front. You can see on the slides there that the red outlined area is where the goats will be placed, and there is sufficient area for the goats to maintain the grass as stated by the applicant. And as I said before, under our conditional use provisions, this would be an allowed use, and staff recommends approval.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for staff? Are there any questions for Heather Burton, the property owner?
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
I would add that there was a conditional use permit on this property with the previous owners, but because the use had lapsed for a year, that's why we're doing a new conditional use permit for it. So there had been farm animals on this property previously.
And was this property posted for this conditional use?
Yes.
And were there any comments from neighbors or anything?
No, staff didn't receive any comments.
Okay.
Well, I would make a motion to approve conditional use permit for the animals for the property 789 East, 80 North.
I'll second it.
All those in favor of approving the conditional use, do we need to add the nuisance to make sure that that is not?
That's actually in the
code.
farm animal chapter.
Okay.
Included, so it would be an automatic condition that's applied.
Okay. So shall we vote? All those in favor of approving this conditional use for farm animals at 789 East, 80 North? We'll start with Mike.
Aye.
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 Conditional use permit passes. Next item on the agenda is the conditional use permit for Major B home occupation for Wasatch Kinder Prep at 556 East, 1150 South, for Meredith McCombs. Did I pronounce that right?
Okay, hi Meredith. I'm Mindy. So we've been chatting on the phone. We'd also like to name all the goats. Where'd she go? Did she leave already?
No.
We'd like to know the goats' names once you have them all placed on your property. we may or may not be goat fans here, so if that's okay. All right, Meredith, we've been working together for a couple of months, well, about a month or so, trying to get this all put together. She's really excited to open up her Wasatch Kinder Prep. She's located at 1150 East, 1150 South, just kind of in my neck of the woods. No, 556 East, 1150 South. As you can see in the next slide, this is where she is located. She's in a residential, an R18 zone, and there are no other conditional uses for preschools within a close proximity of her. She will be having students coming to her home between the hours of 9 and 12, Monday through Friday. And she'll be having activities taking place both in the home and outside of the property in the backyard. We've had no calls come in regards to this. We placed a sign on the property last Friday. We've not had any calls or any questions regarding this conditional use. And with the information, she has done all of her state licensing, and she's good to go there, and she fits within our R18 and having a conditional use, a major home occupation in this area. So staff is recommending approval of this conditional use permit for 556 East, 1150 South for Meredith McCombs for her preschool Wasatch Kinder Prep. And the applicant is here, and if you have any questions for her or for staff, I'm happy to answer.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for staff?
No, but I'd like to comment.
Okay.
I've been volunteering off and on with efforts at the state level to increase the amount of daycare opportunities. And it's a real crisis in our country, but it's really especially bad in Utah. We have a lack of qualified daycare providers. And so any kind of daycare use, I want to publicly state we need to support daycare uses, and I think we need to simplify the process. I'd like to see it become a permitted use, actually, with just administrative sign-off if possible someday. But having been involved with it at the legislative level and with others, it's a real problem in our state. So we need more people who are willing to do daycare. I'm in favor of the proposal.
Usually there's a drop-off plan.
Yes.
I didn't see one with
Let's
this.
see,
Is that a requirement?
So
or
if
is
you
that
look on
just
your
a-
packet on page 9, no, not page 9. It is,
Page 8?
okay, yeah, we don't have one with this staff report. But if you have some questions, I'm sure she'd be happy to share how her drop-off and pickup plan. And then for this preschool, no more than 12 students would be permitted at that time. So if you want to come on up, Meredith. Yes, come on down.
So regarding pickup and drop-off. So dropping off can sometimes be emotional. And so what I would like is for them to be able to line up on our curb. And because we'll have 10 to 12 students, our curb that doesn't have a mailbox that we kind of share with our neighbor can probably fit 4. I talked to my neighbor across the street, a very close friend, and her curb is about the same length. And so we think with those 2 curbs and the mothers or fathers walking the student across the street from her house, that we won't be blocking mailboxes or driveways or really be in anyone's way for very long. And then for pickup on 5th East, there is a long curb where there is just fencing and parking strip. There are no driveways or anything. So my plan is to walk the students past the 4 homes to 5th East. They would line up on 5th East, and then I would have each, get in their vehicle and go. So.
Any questions for Meredith?
Do you have any outside employees who will be
I
coming
do.
to the home?
I do not.
Okay. I know in the past, cities have been bound by regulations at the state level on how many providers, depending on the type of care being provided, whether it's educational, whether it's daycare, that kind of thing. If I'm not mistaken, the rules for in-home daycare, in-home preschool have been liberalized, and so you can have more now than you used to be able to.
So Commissioner, this is for a preschool, which is different than the daycare.
Right,
So
yeah,
the preschool, you're only allowed to just have the 12 students and one teacher there.
right,
The daycare has way different
Yes.
requirements.
Right.
By the state.
right.
So Mindy, did you say that you're only allowed to have one teacher in a preschool? Okay. Can you have parents volunteer? Or,
Technically, no.
okay, good to know. Okay.
Well,
I wasn't
they're
planning
not
on it,
considered
but-
employees, so they're not,
Yeah, okay.
so it would be kind of, I know lots of preschools have volunteers that come in.
Yeah.
And so I would think it would be okay where they're not employees of the preschool.
I mean, that's why I asked too, because sometimes neighbors will get upset if there's an outside person coming in to the home to help take care, to provide instruction or provide daycare, whatever the in-home use is.
Oh,
But
okay.
the rules are more liberal than they used to be.
Oh, okay.
You used to have more people to take care of
Certain
less
number.
children. Yeah, whether it's,
Okay.
I've got a neighbor across the street that does this exact thing, 9 to noon and then like 1 to 4. And, does it in shifts and doesn't bother us as neighbors at all.
Yeah.
Really supportive of it, so.
Awesome. We love the support.
Were there any more questions, comments? Okay. We'll call for
Thank you.
someone to,
Do we have a motion yet? I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for a major B home occupation for Wasatch Kinder Prep for Meredith McCombs at the address located on the application with the recommendation and the research performed by staff listed under item number 4. And of course, subject to compliance with all state of Utah and city licensing regulations.
I'll second that.
okay, we will call for a vote for the conditional use permit for major B home occupation at 556 East, 1150 South. I'll start with myself. Aye.
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 The conditional use permit is approved. Okay, next item on the agenda is a conditional use permit for Rockin' Robin Preschool, so another preschool, awesome. Major B home occupation at 916 Willowmere Drive for Robin Eberhard.
Okay, and I've got that, and I was just gonna tell you, okay, so are you here in behalf of Robin?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, lucky you. All right, and then Meredith, I know you're needing to take off, so I will send you a conditional use letter and finish getting your license approved once we've got the fire. Did you do the fire inspection already? No, already. Okay. So once that's done, then we'll finish the approval of the license, but the conditional use will be finished, and I'll send that to you tomorrow, so, yeah. So, this is the season for preschools. So this is a conditional use permit for Robin Everhard. She, like we just said, she's located at 916 West Willowmere Drive. She has included with her staff report a drop-off, which we will see that in just a minute. She is going to be doing this in the basement of her home. And as far as having employees, there will not be any employees coming to the home under 12 students. And she will be doing preschool, I think her hours, I've got them, and we can double check with her husband if we've got questions on that. We've not had any calls regarding this conditional use permit or the sign there at the home. She's in a great neighborhood with lots of open space. She's got great driveway and pickup system as well for that, for those little preschool students. So staff is recommending approval with this conditional use permit for Rockin' Robins, which sounds like a rockin' good time, at 916 Willowmere Drive for Robin Everhart and Rockin' Robin Preschool.
Any questions or comments from commissioners for staff?
I do. I think the staff report refers to the use in question being conducted in the basement. Is that correct? The use will be conducted completely in the basement?
It's in the basement of the home. Yes, the preschool is going to be in the lower level of the home, which has an exit to the backyard and lots of windows.
Is it at grade? Is the exit to the backyard at grade, or do
It
they
is
have to
not
come up
act-
steps?
You have to go up steps.
Okay. Just from a public safety perspective, has the Kaysville Fire Department come out and checked your
They are
ingress and
scheduled
egress
for
plan?
next week.
Say again?
They're scheduled for next week.
Okay. I'd like to suggest that, you know, this is a great use. I'm in favor of the use as the planning commissioner. But I do have concern that any potential approval be conditioned upon approval of the fire department for ingress egress
Correct.
from the lower level. That would be
Correct.
my big concern. How many steps up? It steps up
Yes.
to get out to the backyard?
Yes, it's about 10.
Okay. So it's down there a ways, yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. More technical questions. Do you have ladders in the window wells? Do you have any window wells that have the ladders?
In the bedrooms, there are window wells. They are not deep window wells on one side. They are about 3 feet high. And then on the front, they went out those rooms. Those are deeper window wells that
Okay.
would need ladders.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to bore everybody, but these are important safety questions for children. How old is the home, by the way?
The home was built in 2006
Okay.
or 7.
Okay, you're good. You don't have the non-conforming windows then, and you know how the old basements have those little small windows, made it impossible for anybody to get out in a fire.
Yeah.
You don't have that. Okay. Well, I will leave it to our fire department to advise you on what needs to be done, but I do think that is an absolute necessity for this use, is that fire department's got to approve your ingress egress. So if there are no other comments, are there other comments by the planning commission?
Mindy, do you need him to state his name for your records?
My name is Brent Eberhard.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion for approval?
I'm willing to make a motion. This is Commissioner Allred. I recommend approval of the conditional use permit for Rockin' Robin Preschool for Robin Eberhard at 916 West Willowmere Drive, per the staff report, research in compliance with city ordinances and also with any state of Utah approvals. But I think we should make the motion contingent. I think we should make the motion to approve contingent upon the sign off by the fire department. Or is that something you would do anyway? Okay, then never mind. The fire department has to approve that. So just with a note or an eye to making sure that the ingress, egress, fire safety is fully addressed by the fire department and that they are not allowed to operate until that is taken care of. Hope that's acceptable.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. We'll vote for approval for the conditional use permit for Major B home occupation at 916 West Willowmere Drive. And we'll start with Will.
Aye.
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 Aye. Conditional use permit is approved. Do you have any comments?
Just the same as the last applicant. Once fire inspection's approved, I will send the conditional use permit letter either tomorrow or Monday, and then once we're all approved with the fire department, we're good to go, and you'll have your business license and ready for preschool in the fall.
Okay, now we're on to item 6, which I think is why most of you are here. Consideration for a rezone application for 1735 South, 550 West from A1 Light Agriculture District to R4 1 to 4 Family Residential District. And the applicant is Brian Carling. And staff report for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. So as stated, we're here, and by we, I think most people in the audience are here to pay attention to this item in particular. So we received an application from Brian Carling to rezone property that he owns over in the southwest quadrant of the city, located at 1735 South, 550 West. The property is 2.8 acres in size. It's currently zoned and used as agricultural. And what a lot of the context of tonight's discussion will be is about density. So with, and I'll go a little bit more into that later on, but with the current zoning, the density entitlement would be 3 dwelling units. I did want to take a little bit of an opportunity to just provide a little bit of education from the standpoint of staff and those of us that live and work in this planning and zoning world. And this is just our world. I understand that some of this perspective shared tonight wouldn't be those that you would adopt. But when we talk about density, we essentially have 3 categories of density: low, medium, and high density. And a lot of times, applications like this are referred to as high density, but we would not, as professional planning staff, categorize those or this as high density. So your low density is, generally speaking, your single family homes. Medium density is more considered attached townhomes type of a thing. And then the higher density are those that you think of, like we have some over at Station Park. And so I will refer to this application as medium density. I wanted to also just talk a little bit about our state code. And for reference, if anyone in the audience wants to go read state code, it's super engaging. We do it all the time. And, it's really not that engaging. So, but the state over the last probably 6 or 7 years has created requirements for cities and municipalities and counties to include moderate income housing elements in general plans. And actually, I think this slide is misplaced. I'm sorry about that. But they have also, over the time that they have been pushing these items onto cities, have come up with penalties for cities for being non-compliant. Some of those penalties include that you would lose funding that you may already have. An example of that is we were awarded a grant of $140,000 to conduct a small area plan of our downtown 200 North area. So if we were found to be non-compliant, those would be the type of funding sources that they could pull from us. And also, if we were found non-compliant, they would deem us ineligible for other grant application opportunities that would include road funding, UDOT funding, and so anything really that the state can control, they're pushing to have these moderate income housing elements in your general plan and then included in that is we have to report every year to the state. We're working on our moderate income housing report right now. It's due August 1st. And they go through a process to determine whether or not we're compliant or not. And they report back to the state legislature on all of those compliance reports. They report back to the cities. And so a lot of what is coming out of here tonight is because of that. And they also have established that if we're non-compliant and in 24, so for the rest of this year, they could fine the local government agencies $250 a day. Next year, that fine goes up to $500 a day. So Now with that, I'll get into a little bit more of the specifics. So this property is located, as I said, over in the southwest quadrant of the city. It's just west of Sunset Drive. The road that it is on is actually a private access. The city does own the parcel, but it's not an improved road, so it's not a public right-of-way. You can see from this aerial view that the area surrounding is mostly undeveloped agricultural land. I'll also speak a little bit more about road connections in additional slides. So when we look at rezone applications, we always want to look at the surrounding area and neighborhoods and what that looks like. This is a zoning map of the area, and that red arrow indicates the Carling property. So most of this area is zoned agricultural. The A1 is the zoning. Let me get my cursor over to here. So A1, these properties. A5 is a heavy agricultural use, which is this darker green, and then these lighter greens are the A1 properties. And then across the street, further to the northeast, is R1LD, which is a residential zone that allows varied lot sizes, but has to be at least a half acre minimum on average. So Mr. Carling did submit a concept with his application and has proposed 27 single-family dwellings in this area. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well when I get into some of the zoning code requirements. This is an aerial shot of where the connector, what we've been calling the connector road. This has been constructed and is paved up until this point. The city, at some point, when other properties in the area develop, would like to have this connect into Angel Street, which is where we're calling the Angel Street Connector Road. When that's done, I think we will be terming this road Angel Street and keep that consistent with the road that it'll connect into. So now I want to talk a little bit about the general plan. So we adopted, the city adopted a general plan in 2022 in August, and then in November, as required by the state, we amended that general plan to include the modern income housing elements. When we look, and I'll just give a little bit of context of how we as staff look at the general plan and try and interpret the information in the general plan. There's a main component that we call the future land use map, and that's kind of our best guess, or this, residents' desired use of how they would like to see properties used in the future. This right here, I believe, is the Carling property. And so this map, the yellow, is shown to be single family, and our general plan does not prescribe anything like low density single family or medium density single family. It just says single family. So that was the intended use. The general plan also has 5 guiding principles, and those are kind of the umbrella statements that leads to all of the other content within the general plan. So there's 5 of those, and one of those guiding principles is to provide diverse housing options within the city. So, there's a need for all types of housing, all types of lifestyles, and then life cycle needs is something that is a need as well. So there were 2 chapters in the general plan that really were relevant to this application. Chapter 1 is our land use and placemaking plan chapter. And so there, and the meat and potatoes really of the general plan are the goals, objectives, and implementation measures that come at the end of each of the chapters. So that first goal that was relevant to this application is that the general plan aims to preserve and protect Kaysville's small town atmosphere by limiting change in functioning neighborhoods and districts. So going back to that aerial shot we looked at just a few minutes ago, you can see this really is established as an agricultural area, and that should be considered as we look at this application. There is also a goal number 8 that states that we want to provide a wide range of housing options and price points that help ensure Kaysville is an affordable place to live. That really is something that we hear often from people about the affordability. A lot of the homes in Kaysville are on large lots, they're large homes. That makes that unaffordable for some people that are younger in their life and careers and may not be able to afford to live in Kaysville. So I think that was something that was an important outcome from residents. And this information did come from public involvement and public participation from residents who chose to participate, and then as well as the Planning Commission that was on at the time and the City Council. There's also some additional goals. This goal 1 is in, sorry, we already covered that one. So our Housing and Neighborhoods chapter, which is chapter 3, is where that moderate income housing elements are contained. And for additional context as well, the state had provided to cities through state code, there was a menu of about 24, I think, options that we could choose from to include in our general plan. So the state tells us that we have to have at least 3 in order to be compliant. Larger cities and cities that have transit, like Station Park, Layton's transit stop, they have to have 5 elements in order to be compliant. In Utah, our general plans are considered advisory documents, which means this is an ideologic way of looking at development in the future. It's not something that is the city is bound to follow. So you can, if there's something in the general plan that doesn't support, whether it's a rezone or a text amendment, the City Council is free to do that. Vice versa, if there's something that is supported and the council does not want to make that change, they can. Other states have mandatory general plans, but Utah has advisory ones. However, the way the state is viewing this moderate income housing is more of a mandatory item. And there are chapters in this general plan. Only one of those we have to report back to the state on, and that's this moderate income housing element. So the main goal in that chapter is to provide a full range of housing opportunities that aligns with the goal 1 in, the guiding principle. And we actually even had to submit our general plan to the state to make sure it was compliant. And there were several cities in 2022 that were found that their general plans were not in compliance. So that said, what the state is viewing this is that we have made a commitment to them to follow the objectives from the state code that we chose to include it in our plan. So this objective 1.3 was one, and that's the first one that they have listed in the state code, which is why that has the parenthetical A. But that was to rezone for densities necessary to facilitate the production of moderate income housing. They've also required us to provide timelines and implementation measures. And one of those, or the implementation measures that we included in our plan, was that if the general plan and the future land use map supports a rezone, that we would give a positive recommendation. That's something that we would do regardless. We also committed to give strong consideration to rezone applications that may not be supported by all of the elements of the general plan. And then we said as well that we would give consideration to rezone applications which may not have support of the general plan, but may make sense for locations that rezone request is located within. So that that overview, as we as staff look at the general plan, we really try and weigh those goals and objectives and see what weighs heavier. And given the mandatory compliance checks that the state is having, we need to hold a higher weight on those modern housing elements. So there are elements of the general plan, to be fair, that don't support this application, but there are elements that do support it as well. Next, I want to just talk a little bit about the differences between the A1 and the R1 zone. We always want to inform the public of, what those differences are, and these are in city code. But A1 has a minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet. R4 has some interesting, which I'll go in on to the next slide, but some interesting square footage requirements, but the smallest lot size allowed is 3,000 square feet. The height of buildings is the same regardless, and actually that's for all of our ag and residential zones. 30 feet is the max height. So the front setback is 30 feet in A1, and that's the amount of distance that your building is required to be from the property line. So it's 25 feet in R4, which is 5 feet less. The side setbacks, there's a difference of 2 feet less required in the R4 zone. And the rear setback, there is 30 feet for A1 and then 15 feet in the R4. The frontage requirement that's the measurement on the front part of your lot. And the A1 zone requires 100 feet. The R4 is 70. So R4 allows single-family homes, and that is what Mr. Carling has proposed this evening. It also allows two-family dwellings, so it could be a twin home. It allows 3-family dwellings and 4-family dwellings. So those could be townhome style, they could be duplex style, but the code allows for up to 4 attached dwelling units. However, the property size for a 4-family dwelling would be a minimum of 12,000 square feet, and then 3 is 8,000. And so that's where, going back to that previous slide, I get the minimum lot size is 3,000 square feet, which would be if the 4-family dwelling option was done with a single-family home. It also has at least 600 feet of open space that's required per unit, and 20 feet of outdoor storage that's required per unit as well. I noted in my staff report that, as current, this rezone, I understand, and many of the comments that have come in is that it just doesn't fit in the area. This next slide just shows there is 9.2 acres in yellow that's shown. Ivory Homes owns this property. The red is owned by Symphony Homes, that's 28 acres. I've not had any meetings or conversations with Ivory Homes about their property, but I have met with Symphony Homes. The last time I met with them was in February. And I can tell you that they thought they would be submitting a rezone application this year. So those of you who care about this area, you may be receiving additional notices. Also, you can sign up for notices on our website to see what is on Planning Commission agenda, and there's a state website, you can sign up for public hearing notices. You can also sign up for notices to have the city council agendas sent to you as well. So what Ivory Homes has shown us is that they would like to, across these 28 acres, put about 220 homes. And units, let me say that. So what they were looking at was trying to put down lower here towards where that connector road is, some townhome style property or units, and then some R16, which is our smallest or our lowest, highest density allowed for single families. So that would be 6,000 square foot lots. They wanted to put some 8,000 square foot lots in as well. And then their idea was kind of to match as the project would move further north. They wanted to match some of the much lower density that exists in the surrounding area with the residential that's currently established. So That has not been an application that we've received yet. When we do, again, we'll go through the same process that I'll discuss here in just a moment about our noticing. But I wanted to share this to just kind of show that the area over here will be changing from agricultural at some point. And again, the council has full discretion over whether or not they approve or deny a rezone, but that moderate income housing portion of the general plan and the state code does make it a little bit more troublesome for us. And I'll also say that, this has been something that as I have worked through this over the last, 6-7 years, and talked with colleagues in cities across the state, this has been something that has been very frustrating to us because we care about what the community thinks, and so do our elected officials, and so do our planning commissioners. And candidly, a lot of these requirements are asking your city officials to disregard what some of your wishes are. And, and that has been a struggle. But the state has, again, over the years, become more and more strict with us following these requirements. And so, I believe at some point these properties with Ivory and with Symphony Homes will be developed in some manner. It may not be what they would like, and like I said, this was just kind of a draft concept that they presented to staff earlier this year, but at some point Symphony will submit a rezone application and these properties over here will be developed into housing. So just wanted to kind of let the public know that there will be more of this coming. We go through a process of trying to inform as many people as we can. Our city leaders have put into our code that we have to make our best effort to notify everybody within a 500-foot radius of the subject property. So this map just shows all of those properties that were mailed a notice, and with properties over there being this large, we ended up sending out about 17 notices. We've received a lot of public comments. We've had many emails that have been submitted that are in support of this application. However, most have been in opposition based on, the density, changing the rural feel of the area, traffic, health impacts, lighting, property values, loss of agricultural space. It's kind of the typical opposition topics that we get. So we are recommending that, based on the support from the general plan, that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval of the rezone application to R4 to the City Council. And just as kind of a process standpoint, the Planning Commission on legislative items, which this is considered, they are a recommending body. So we, by state statute, are required to hold a public hearing this evening and allow people to comment. And then the Planning Commission will forward a recommendation if that's what they end up doing tonight. There's some different things that could happen, I think, with the discussion. And then that would go to City Council at a following meeting. Going back to, let's see, this slide. Mr. Carling has proposed 27 single-family dwellings. That is allowed by code. However, as I think our Planning Commission is aware, we could only enforce that to be developed as he has submitted through the use of a development agreement. So that's something that I wanted the Planning Commission to discuss this evening is, if you were wanting to recommend approval, the tool that we would use to ensure that this project would be what was presented here this evening would be the use of a development agreement. And there's different items that you could put in the development agreement, right? We could limit density. We could say that we want them to be single-family homes and that we don't want them to be detached. So that was something that I did want to point out to the Planning Commission. And then to address some of the other questions that we had with the public, was concerns about where the traffic would come from. And again, going back to that slide showing that Symphony Homes owns a lot of the property in that area. My belief is that the access is likely to come from that connector road up north. And so the next, if this is approved, the next phase of development is a subdivision. And through that subdivision is where property has to be dedicated for public roads. We do require that access to residential property comes from a paved road. So Mr. Carling is here this evening and can speak to this, but I believe that the intent he has is to kind of time things, if this is approved, with Symphony to help with the fact that road is not fully improved. And usually what happens in these instances is the city, it's in our Title 19, which is our subdivision code, we would require, we wouldn't require, but if the developers wanted to enter into a pioneering agreement, which is just a term that we use to say you're the first one getting there, first one extending utilities or a road, and that agreement would have to be reviewed by the city for accurate costs. But that agreement essentially would say, look, we know at some point these properties are going to develop. We're here first. We'll pay for the road. But when your property X, Y, and Z develops, then you will reimburse that first developer, that pioneer, for those costs. So that, at some point in time, 550 West will be a fully improved road and would connect into Mare Drive. So I think that was everything that I wanted to cover. So I will turn that over to the Planning Commission for questions and discussion.
So just to clarify, the 550 does not have utilities extended in it at this point?
I believe there are utilities. Is there water? Power, okay.
Power.
So,
But no
okay,
water
yeah,
or
secondary
sanitary
water,
sewer?
secondary water and irrigation. So, but the other utilities, right, the stormwater, they would be included in that pioneering agreement, water lines. And, so that is a large cost on whoever is developing. And so that's, in general, why a lot of times if you're first to an area, you do have those pioneering agreements.
Okay. So, Mr. Carling, will you come to the podium and present your plan for development?
For the record, I'm Brian Carling. I own the property, I'm the applicant. We've owned the property about 20 years now. We bought it when things were way different than they are now, with the plan that we would one day maybe build and retire in that area. Things have drastically changed, obviously. I'm here for answers that you might have. I'm sure I might be up now and come up a little bit later, but let me know what I can address and answer for you.
I have a question. Did you previously serve on the Planning Commission?
I did, years ago. Thank you for all that you do. I know it's many times a thankless job. Thank you.
Mr. Carling, the reason I ask that is because your neighbor, Merrill Sheriff, does he still live there?
He does.
He proposed a development.
Back here.
Huh?
He's here.
Merrill proposed some development there, and as I recall, you were quite opposed to it.
Yes, it was.
And I believe a lot of those issues had to do with the road.
It was the road, it was before the half cul-de-sac that's in there now. And the proposal was to, as I recall, have a very long cul-de-sac that came off of Sunset with no thought for development on the 550, which the city owns.
Yeah, and as somebody who was, and I'll state for the public record, I was advising Mr. Sheriff at the time on land use issues, on zoning issues. And I had quite a beef with Andy Thompson, who was the city engineer at the time, about why it was a requirement for Mr. Sheriff to somehow have to have a second access off of 550 over a road he couldn't possibly control, and why the city was not willing to allow him to have a long cul-de-sac. And so I guess I just want to ask you, how have things changed that you should be allowed to do something similar that he couldn't? How has it changed that that's okay?
So my proposal tonight is a zoning change, plain and simple. It's just a zoning change. I've thrown together a concept which would show the highest possible density if a 55-foot road, considering my neighbors, the Purines. Are the Purines here tonight? So James and Julie Purine, I've taken care of their property for about 18 years. Our concept was, with our limited width, there's about 216 feet of width north to south. If you do the math, and if we did a proper road.
On your parcel alone?
My parcel in blue right there.
Okay.
So if we do the math, 55 foot of road minus the 215, 16, it leaves 160 feet. Well, with the 25 front setbacks on both of the north and the south facing properties, it leaves 15 feet on the rear for a defined backyard. That leaves a footprint of a home of about 40 by 40, plus or minus, maybe it's 32, maybe it's 38. But you can see here with fire department, I believe that the city has a limitation on how far a cul-de-sac can go and still have a radius turn for security, well, not for security, but for emergency services.
600 feet.
600 feet. And I think mine would probably go about low 500s, high 400s. That's why the road to the south, which the James and Julie Purine that own the property south of me, they're totally in agreement that we would do this conceptually together, and that's why this would not be a cul-de-sac, but it would be sort of a horseshoe mirrored image of both of the lots. I just don't want to develop my neighbor's property. I mean, it's a valuable service to do. So a little bit different in application on where the road would go. We would not be excluding any neighbor of access. It cannot be developed right now. The city has got to forego their interest in the property. Every property owner along there has to give up at least 2.5 feet, if not 7.5 feet, depending on what the current city engineer says what their goal is for the width of the road, north and south, which would be, is that a continuation of Mayor Drive, Melinda?
Yeah, I had this conversation earlier this week with the Public Works Director and City Engineer. We would classify that as a local collector. It would be a 65-foot right-of-way that would be required.
So
That was going to be my next question.
So automatically, that changes my design by 5 more feet, because that blue area is a little bit in question, the far left side, because we have to have stormwater retention. And the red is, you can't really see that, and I don't think it transferred on the JPEG file, but that was originally the 2.5 foot setback. So if the city holds our feet to the fire, everybody's got to give up 7.5 feet, and that reduces density. You gotta work with it, and I understand that. But what this concept is this is a zoning change request. This is just, okay, throw it on a napkin. I have access to the aerial maps that are highly accurate, but that is a 55-foot proper road, sidewalks on both sides, places for people to park at Thanksgiving, where sometimes people come in with a PRUD and it's miserable to go to your daughter's house that lives up in East Kaysville because there's nowhere to park. And this 27 would be the maximum that this zoning with my square footage would allow. That would be the maximum.
Thank you for answering that question.
Mr. Carling, the lots that you show there, the size like 12,000 to 10,000 square feet, and then in the concept plan that we have in our staff report. I don't know if you have a copy of that one to throw up there that has the yellow
Oh, it's on there.
area and the
Oh,
numbers.
wait, this one?
And Melinda, I sent you a second concept that had
Oh,
digits on it.
Looks like this.
Does that have the digits on it?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, correct. The digits show like a 12,000, the largest lots up there would be a 4-unit.
So, and that's what the zoning allows, is for up to 4 units, you can have, you must have a 12,000 square foot lot. But you're saying you're going to do that as single-family homes, is that right?
The concept and openly discussed for this type of a home would be townhomes, not duplexes, not triplex. Townhomes are typically always defined by a single owner, wall to wall, front to back. This would not be owned like by one consortium, some large investment firm, where it would be condos. This would be typically a 2-car garage, about an 8 to 10 foot entryway, a kitchen with a pantry and a half bath and a great room dining area on the main floor. And then upstairs, you would have 3 bedrooms with a large master bedroom, 2 children rooms, bedrooms, and a laundry. About 1,600 to 1,700 square foot of living space plus garage. That is typically front to back, 40 feet. That's all the width I've got to work with. 40 feet, approximately 32 to 38 feet of width maximum.
So, but they would be attached, those 4 units?
They would abut each other, correct?
Yes, like on, just for instance, right in the center where the corner is on that concept, that would be a 2 twin home unit because of corner setbacks. And I didn't go for the R6 or the RM, which allows up to 6. Not a big difference in density. The concept is kind of the same, but this is a better representation, reworking the figures as you're looking at the screen there now.
Okay, and so on the lots where you have the 4 units, they would be 4 individually owned units but attached?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's like condos, like condominiums?
Townhomes,
Yeah.
they would be called
Right.
townhomes.
Okay.
Just to further clarify, Wilf, if I could, you're talking about owning the ground underneath the unit, correct?
I am not an expert on exactly how the titling would be
Okay.
finalized,
Well,
but that is a concept that, yes, the mortgage company would hold title on someone that were to borrow money against it, and that structure from wall to wall and then the edge of the described legal property would be an individually owned. They're just attached.
but it's vertically owned, not horizontally, correct?
Correct.
That's the real differentiation.
Not like a condo. This
Right.
is not a condo.
Right.
And I'm willing to go on the record that I will hold myself to this concept if I have anything to do with final development and sale.
By the way, just, if I could apologize to everybody, we've gone way beyond the issue of density and zoning. That's why everybody's here tonight. And everybody wants to know the end at the beginning with rezone process. They all want to know what the units will look like, how tall will they be, and it's always, it's always ill-advised to do that. But if we're on that discussion of, is this, there's a big difference between a townhome and a condo. A condo
There
is
is.
a horizontal.
Or a duplex or a triplex.
Exactly.
You're right. This, for my purposes, I want my 3 sons cannot live in Kaysville. All my children live in Kaysville right now. They all grew up, went to Davis High. You cannot find a home in Kaysville under $400,000 and probably a lot higher.
Yeah.
If you compare just January 2020 to January 2024, we're looking at a 4-year period. The average, the median home price in Utah, not cherry picking, this is just in Utah, over those 4 Januaries, the median price in Utah is up 53%. We know what interest rates have done. So if you want to buy the median home in Utah last January, your house payment is 2.5 times greater for the same median home in Utah. Kaysville is on the right edge of that bell-shaped curve.
Yeah.
Our children cannot live here.
Yeah.
The city has The state has mandates to try to think differently about it. This is only a zoning change.
Yeah.
I cannot guarantee what will be in there, but if I have anything to do with it, this is my concept. Backyards, yes, they're small, but they're defined. Front yards that are complying with the 25-foot setback. A road that is dedicated to the city, done right, and it's 55-foot wide with sidewalks on both sides. And these would be single-family dwellings that can own it, get a mortgage on it, and benefit from the rise in future prices and value.
I think those are important questions to broach at this stage, because that's what everybody wants to know, what's going to be built. And it's not always possible to answer that question, but as much as possible, it's advisable, if you can, to at least have an idea of what it will be. Further question about logistics, this is for staff. When you were talking about the development agreement, could the city, through the development agreement, reduce setbacks on the front yard? Could they reduce any other geometric?
Yeah, you could.
We
Part of the code.
could. I will say this, that in our chapter 3, it does have a goal of us looking at those types of things and changing zoning to be more permissive. So yes, we could do it through development agreement. We could also do it through a text amendment with the code.
In conjunction with the development agreement, a text amendment?
No, I think we can just do it with the development agreement. That would become the zoning legislation
Okay.
for the rezone, should it be approved.
Okay.
I do want to just say that I may have, during all of our conversations, completely misunderstood the intent that Mr. Carling had. I thought his intent was to do 27 detached single-family homes. And I think you
But it's
just said
not.
something different.
So to clarify, so let's take the first northwest lot right there, and it says 12,000 square feet, and it has the number 4 on there. That 12,000 square foot lot would be, I believe, 150 by 80 feet on dimensions, 150 feet wide, 80 feet deep. That would have 4 townhomes on it.
Okay. During all of our conversations, did not understand that was what you were intending to do, and I think there may have been miscommunication between like being individually owned, which townhomes by code, by our code, are opportunities for individual ownership. My takeaway, and apologies if I misunderstood, but my takeaway was that they would be detached single-family units, which is, I believe, what I had stated in my staff report. So apologies if that was the misunderstanding, but just want to get that on the record, that I was surprised to hear what you had just said, because my understanding was different.
I noticed on your staff report, you said that as many as 40 units could be accomplished in this square footage. The way that that's planned, this is the maximum.
Yeah, and there was the caveat saying that does not take into account road removed for, or property removed for a public road, nor does it take into account the lot dimensions, because candidly, at this phase of development, we're usually not talking this many specifics. We're talking the use of the property. So zoning is use. We have commercial uses, we have light industrial uses, we have multifamily uses, single-family uses. The R zone is a multifamily zone, but wanting to be transparent, I generally calculate just off straight math. But knowing, right, there's a lot of things in there, setbacks, those type of things that impact, and we don't get to that place until the subdivision phase to really understand what, sometimes we don't understand what density could be allowed. So I definitely, when I wrote that, had that caveat of generally speaking is about 20 to 30% less, but also wanted the public to know, that in my experience, if other things developed in this area, there was a roadway that went on the north and the south side, you know, that rezone, again, without having some type of a development agreement, it could be developed a little bit more densely. And so I generally put that straight math number in there, but also knowing that really is not a feasible number most of the time. It's generally, like I said, 20 to 30% less.
I'd like to make a comment just for the benefit of Kaysville residents. I believe that if this kind of zoning goes through, the overlay of the PRUD should not be allowed to this, because a lot of times what people will do is they'll count that road as their square footage, and they'll really cram them in there, and you got a crappy road that's so tight, and you can't invite guests over. That's not my intention here. This is something where I would want my children to be able to live here.
So just another question. You were mentioning your neighbors to the south.
Purine.
Are they wanting to develop similar to what you're doing? So
Yes.
having a rezone for their property as well?
That is up, I don't want to develop for them, but yes.
But that is the intent?
I talk to them regularly, yes. Particularly Julie Purine, and that could go on the record that we could put her as in favor. She said that she is in favor. Me being her representative selfishly.
They did submit a comment through the portal that you all received that was favorable.
Are they here? Is your neighbor here? Well, while we're on the topic, is there any chance that if you get a rezone approval that they would want to come in and rezone as well?
My guess is yes.
Because if that's the case, then I would think that a rezone for the two properties is better than just for the one.
Is that a requirement?
Well, I've seen some cities urge as much as possible within the law to say, we'll get a better development pattern if you take the two properties and you can develop it, for example, with rear loading. You know, you can
That
do.
is why the road is developed, or the road is proposed, because our lots are almost identical
Yeah.
in size.
Yeah.
That's why that is.
A horseshoe
that way.
shaped development makes a really good.
Fire department is
development.
going to require something of that nature.
Yeah, the location of utilities and other things, rear load possibilities. A lot of design things are better if you have two properties instead of one, but that's just thinking outside the box.
And just to clarify with staff, was there any change to the recommendations of staff based on this new information of
No,
the townhouse being
I-
attached or detached?
No, it would not change. However, it would make some of those elements of the general plan not supportive. So that future land use map that showed single family, if they are attached units, even though they're individually owned, that would not support this application. And I think that's really probably the only part that would change. So that still, I think even with that, the scales still would be very evenly weighed as to how many items support, but again, giving the compliance requirements that the state has, I do fall to having a heavier weight on the moderate income housing elements. So if it were to be a balanced scale, based on Chapter 3 and those items, I would tip that scale still towards recommending.
Along that same line, a couple other questions then. When we mention 80% AMI, do we know what that exact figure is for a house? What 80% of AMI is in terms of income, and then therefore what the mortgage would be? Because developers will often come in and use the word affordable, but they're nowhere near,
affordable.
They're not affordable because they're nowhere near the 80%. So they use affordable, the word, but it's actually very misleading. So you say you have children you'd like to live in the community. I think that's laudable. Do we know what the price of a single-family home in your project, if it were approved theoretically, to get to 80% AMI, do we know what that is?
I think it's 80%, and I think the statement is of the community that it's around.
No,
It's the county.
It's the, well, the county, I mean, it's
yes.
still community.
County, it's a county.
And I believe the county area median income is about 85,000. So the state, first of all, let me give a distinction. There is a distinction between moderate income housing and affordable housing.
That's right.
We are speaking about moderate income housing.
Right.
Typically, affordable housing has subsidies, whether it's, generally from federal government. So we are not speaking of affordable housing, just this is straight terminology, but the state defines moderate income housing as no more than 30% of your income can be going towards your housing costs, and that's 80% or below of what the area median income is. So if the area median income is about 85,000, then you would take 80% of that, and then 30% of that income can only go towards the housing.
That would be a
Right?
house payment of $1,700 a month.
Yeah.
Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Because that's what's important when we're using this terminology. We need to make sure the residents, everybody understands that if a developer comes in and says, I want to build affordable homes, well, that's a totally different language than what she's saying. She's making a good point. She's saying, hey, affordable can be a red herring versus a moderate income. The state requires moderate income, not affordable.
When the land is going for almost $500,000 an acre, there's some challenges.
Yeah.
This has a very high water table. We believe that we would have at most crawl spaces here. The city ordinance allows the midpoint of the top to the bottom rake of the roof of 30 feet. These are two-level homes. These cannot be tall homes. You can't get 3 stories on homes like that.
No basement then, are you saying?
Well, I have what's called I have a surface well out here. 3 feet down, there's water.
Okay.
Year-round for 20 years, other than the drought we had 2 years ago. I will say this also. I said to staff they could put me on record on this, that city fire, city police, city employees, many of the teachers, cannot afford to live in Kaysville. And I will go on record saying that if and when this development is sold by me and my family, I will give the city an unrestricted grant of $30,000. The intention would be for 3 employees or fire or police to each receive a $10,000 grant for a first-time home buyer to those types of Kaysville City participants in those kind of services. I think that would be a great thing for other developers to follow, but I live here. I've lived here in Kaysville for 32 years. People are going to say I'm greedy. I bought this land when mosquitoes were there and no one wanted to live there. And this is my proposal, and I'm just looking for a change in what we do. I would like a straight up or a down vote tonight. I know that a prior application that was met by my neighbor from the Sunset Equestrian, they were tabled, I think they were tabled indefinitely. But I would like an up and down or vote, up or down vote. And I'm still available for questions, but I probably should sit down and let you get on.
Are there any additional questions from commissioners?
I don't know if this is valid for it, but you did say that you are applying for a rezone, and the intent is for you to develop it or possibly sell it off to one of the developers. You've got large developers that own property adjacent to this property, and we don't know what their zones are going to be on that. Are you planning on trying to follow this through, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Symphony Homes and another developer have come to me and offered to purchase the property from me, as well as my neighbors to the south. I've not wanted to do that. I could sell probably fairly quickly, but I don't want to. I would love to have future equity that I could create to do something positive in my life for my children. And people may mock and say, oh, you know, your children aren't really going to live there. Well, we all live in Kaysville now, and I've stuck to it this far, and I've put the plan together. I don't intend to sell. I may not be able to be the builder on all of that. I don't have a construction general contractor's license. But there's nothing wrong with starting new companies and new concepts and trying to make a difference and go in a different direction so that more people can live here. Chairman?
I think we're good.
Thank
No
you.
other comments or questions? Okay. So we will open it up to the public. Is it public hearing? Public hearing. Because of the late hour, we'd like to keep the comments to about 3 minutes. So particularly if you have comments that are being repeated, if you could just, if you want to come up and speak, you can say, you know, I want to just reiterate what, you know, this person said so that we're not having to be here until after 10 o'clock tonight. Would be really nice. Anyway, but
I think we could add too that we've seen all the emails.
we have seen all the
That have come
emails
in.
and the comments, and we appreciate all of you being here. This is a long meeting, we know, and willing to participate in the government effort, so.
Commissioner, if I could just also say, and this is a passion that I have, but we would like this to be a safe place for all people to comment, and so we would appreciate no clapping, no boos or cheers. It really can be disconcerting for those who may have a differing opinion from the majority in the room, for them to feel like it's okay to stand up and express their feelings. We have a timer set up here for 3 minutes, and we'll start that timer with each speaker. We would like you to just state your name for the record so that when we do the minutes, we can have your name. And then we would also appreciate knowing if you live in Kaysville or if you live in a different city. I think that covers.
Let me just clarify also that this is your time, your 3 minutes, and so we don't have conversations during this time. Like, we don't really answer questions. Sometimes we will clarify something, staff will clarify a fact or something like that after your 3 minutes. But our job during this time is just to listen to you and hear your comments.
Yeah, correct. So when we close the public hearing after everyone's done speaking, that's when, the Planning Commission typically asks staff to address some of the questions that may have come up during those comments. But we do want to protect your time, give you 3 minutes, and so it's not a dialogue or a back and forth. It's just us listening to what your comments are.
Okay, the public hearing is officially open. Whoever wants to speak may come up to the podium.
Who's going to be first?
My name's Leroy Wilson. I live on the corner up there, Sunset Drive and the dirt road. If this development goes through, what are you going to do with the dirt road? You got 3 minutes to answer me. Do you know the history of that? Woodside Homes came in and provided 2 lots. It was part of their last bit of development. The city came and they gave them a permit to put a cul-de-sac in. A couple of the guys who used that dirt road went over and said, no, we can't do that. You can't shut that dirt road down because that's our access to our property. Well, you can go through the subdivision. You go to hell is what the comment was. And the dirt road's still there. If you put 27 homes down here, how are they going to get in and out? You going to keep the dirt road open? You can make them go through the subdivision. You're going to put the road down to the end. Fire and safety is your concern. Those people going up and down that dirt road off of the end of the cul-de-sac to the Sunset Drive is not a safe situation. You had another 27 cars coming in the morning, or going out in the morning, coming back in at night. It's already bad enough. With all the horse people and stuff like that, they come in and out of there all day long. It's a mess. I live in a dirt pile all day long. They come running down there, make dust, make dust. City does not patrol that road. It gets pots in it. Somebody comes along and fills the pot up with dirt. It rains. Now I got dirt in my driveway. Because nobody takes care of the dirt road.
Can I just have you clarify which dirt road is that?
From the end of Mare Drive to Sunset Drive.
Yeah, so it's just
It's not,
So the 5,
right up here, there's a dirt road.
There you go.
oh, okay, right
I
there.
own an acre and a half right there. So everybody that goes down into that goes past my house. Dump trucks, horse trailers, all the construction equipment from down there. Cars all day long, the drug dealers at the end of the road. Goes up and down that dirt road. Nobody takes care of it. I've been flooded twice. Irrigation broke twice on me, flooded my house. The irrigation companies put more in reconstructing and redeveloping my house than I actually put to build it in the first place. I've been there 33 years. What are you gonna do with the dirt road? That's my question. Public safety, another 27 homes, that's not safe. That's not a viable situation.
Yeah.
All right, my name is Matt House. I'm a Kaysville resident. I live in the area too, so I have a lot of interest in this. I think the statement that the traffic will be going south onto the Angel Street extension is optimistic at best. There's a lot of interest north of there. There's schools, there's churches. I think a lot of the traffic that wants to go north will go north on 550 West. It connects with Mare Drive, and it goes straight through onto Seabiscuit Drive. Seabiscuit Drive currently has 29 houses on it. So if we allow this development to rezone, which is really just the tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, we heard tonight all the different people who want to come in and rezone, and this is just a fraction of the rezoning that will take place in the near future. Just this development alone has the potential to double the traffic on Seabiscuit, drastically increase it on Mare. What happens when the rest of the rezoning goes in? I think that rezoning beyond the R1 that most of the neighborhood is in is irresponsible, while 550 West can connect into Mare Drive and Seabiscuit. I think if any of this rezoning is to take place, that connection needs to be removed, so traffic is forced on to the Angel Street connection. Just personal comment, I guess, listening to all the things all the discussions taking place here today. I was greatly bothered by the $30,000 offer that was made to the city if this was to go through. I mean, on the surface, that looks like a bribe. This does not pass the red face test. But yeah, that's my comments. We're all very, very concerned about the traffic that will increase north of here if this rezoning takes place. So. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're trying to get a laser pointer so that when you're talking, you can point up here and we can see. It'd be helpful because,
Do you want me to?
yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if we could, your area, but we want to,
Makes sense, yeah.
yeah, so if you could point to,
Yeah, so.
everybody who comes up, if you can, use the pointer if you need to.
So this is 550 West right here.
And where do you live?
I live up here on Seabiscuit.
Okay, you're
So
in
the
the,
550 West goes to Mare Drive and it continues on into Seabiscuit. This is a four-way intersection right here, or
Right.
at least it will be when 550 West is developed. South of here, down here, is the Angel Street extension that's being built,
yeah,
and it has not been connected in yet. From the plans that I saw, there's gonna be an east side and a west side connection into Angel Street. If this connection remains in place, it will be the only northern egress from this neighborhood. All of this traffic will exit to go north onto either Seabiscuit or Mare Drive. Seabiscuit can't handle this much traffic. Not to mention the intersection up north of here with Western and Sunset.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is Seabiscuit right here, and it comes up and it turns and connects into Thoroughbred, I think is this road right here. And then if you go up even more north, the way out of this section, this whole neighborhood is Western and Sunset. It already has so much traffic on it that during certain parts of the day, you're waiting 5 minutes just to turn onto Sunset. I mean, if all of this traffic is forced up onto Seabiscuit or on Mayor right here, it's just gonna clog up this entire area, which was never meant to have that much traffic.
So to clarify, are you saying there needs to be another access out to Sunset, not just up through your neighborhood?
My preference would be cut off this right here. Don't allow 550 to merge with Mayor. Force everything down onto the Sunset connection right here. That way, none of this can exit to the north, because it can't handle the traffic.
So I think, Paul, of course, all of this, we'll take a look at it when they get around to doing a subdivision plat.
Yeah.
But yeah, bottom line, any rezoning beyond R1 is irresponsible because the streets can't handle the traffic. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Lisby, and I live at 1814 South Sunset Drive. And the back of our property is, we share a common property line with Brian Carling. So we are directly impacted by whatever happens. So we have been in our home for 27 years. So when he commented that, 20 years when he bought, nobody was out there, we were already there. And so we were one of the first new homes to be built in the area. And things like look, feel, value were considered to ensure that what we built fit into West Kaysville. And we deliberately chose that area. We chose that for the rural lifestyle. We chose that for the ground. We have an acre of ground right there that would be adjoining to this property. And so since then, I think we all know the rules have changed like crazy, and things have gotten smaller and a lot more dense. And that's a concern. That's a really big concern. And I know that in talking with Symphony, in fact, I spoke with Symphony this last week, and their intent, because we are now also impacted on the south side of our property, because that's the property line that Stenquist had that they sold. So we've been very close to Symphony, and they have assured us that they still intend to try to keep the open feel for us. And as she described, as it gets closer out to 177, that's where the density comes in. I'm incredibly concerned about traffic, about noise, about light pollution. I'm also concerned about my property value. Because, I understand about the need for the moderate income housing, but let's just be smart about this. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I get the pressure that the city's under, but then there's also responsibility to those of us who've been there and been there a really long time, chose this. It's expensive to have an acre. It's really expensive, and I would hate to see any of our property value or anything like that be affected by this. I don't want to be a snob or anything. I mean, I understand all of that. But I guess I just ask you to consider that and think about, is there a smarter way to go about this, like with Symphony, when I talk with them, and a phased approach, the further you get away from some of the existing developments, to be able to get smaller the further you get away from where we are now. So I would ask you, as a property owner, I would like for it to think that you represent my interests as well. And so as a property owner who is directly affected by all of this going on around us, I would ask you to please deny this rezoning request. Oh, one other thought. I think with him not having a clear plan of it and not having road access, I'm concerned like Leroy about the road, that I think it might be very dangerous to approve this rezone with not knowing exactly what he's thinking about doing. So, thank you.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to come up and talk to you today. My name is Matthew Mann. I live across the street. I want to shine this in your eyes. But I am right in here. So I'm facing directly at this whole change that's going to happen over there. I think it's important to note that the majority of Sunset Equestrian is all zoned RA. That means that they are about, half an acre, one dwelling per half acre, and that whole area around that is also that zone as well. I am not 1A, I am R120, and I have 0.46 of an acre. If you guys were to approve what this gentleman is asking, that basically would allow me to rezone and put 6 dwellings on my half acre. You're opening a Pandora's box. I think you're going to find that a lot of people are going to want to change their zones, and you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you, fighting a lot of people wanting to have their kids in their backyard. We all have the same issues. We have all invested in this area. We've paid to live here. Changing it now, well, I'm sorry. We've all invested. We pay. We live here, and why make it different now so that others don't, I guess we want to make it easier for people to live here, but I think it's important that we know that we don't want to drive the values down of the community as well. You talked about the general plan. It states on page 15 that larger vacant and undeveloped properties are encouraged to develop as conservation subdivisions, which would provide a variety of single-family housing types and forms, and clustering development and open space in a manner that can preserve the small town pastoral and open feel of the city. On the same page, it states that most multifamily residential areas are anticipated to be located adjacent to or within the city center, which will provide excellent access to downtown businesses and services. This is, we're not even anywhere near downtown. We're as far west as you can get and almost as far south as you can get. We talked about the road. South Sunset has finally been repaired. It's taken years. Now we're going to add, we talked about 250 homes going in here times 2 or 3 cars. We're talking 700 cars heading north on Sunset. That road's going to get destroyed. On page 92 of the Kaysville City General Plan, there's a Appendix A, Community Engagement. There was a survey that was done during COVID via online. It was a 4-week survey, and I'll read this. It says, a public scoping was instead conducted via an online platform. I'd like to read this last paragraph, if that's okay. The results were a promising response with nearly 2,000 visitors and 431 comments, 252 questionnaire responses, and 156 visual preference survey responses. After thoroughly reviewing the collected data, and a summary and analysis is described in the following sections. So that's a total of 839 respondents in Kaysville responding to the survey. This is their ‑1 concern under land use. Concerns, this is quote from your own document, concerns over high density developments in West Kaysville. Many in this area would like to keep the remaining open spaces or cease large lot sizes. My ask is that you respect the people that have made Kaysville. We've invested here, we made this our home. Please listen to their responses. That's more than the 17 people you sent surveys to, or the little flyer that was at the end of the dirt road. We found out about this today. We didn't have time to really prepare other than this, so I hope you listen to the people of Kaysville.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Carl Price. I live right here on the corner of Mayor and 550. We built this community with the intent that it would, I'm not naive, there's a field open behind there. I assumed it would be similar homes. If you go north, just across Western, the homes get exponentially larger. We're talking $2–3 million homes. And if you're going south, now we're going to go into the medium density housing. There's a reason why people moved to Mayberry, and it wasn't because there was apartments there. So we bought here, like I said, with the intent to maintain what we have in our small town atmosphere of Kaysville. is a family homes, not apartment complexes, so thank you.
Evening. I'm Jason Gagne. I live in Kaysville. In prior city council meetings, we've had discussions about the proposals of high-density, moderate-density housing within this area. And at those times, it was brought up that there were letters provided by the city to the residents on 550 that that road would never be improved and it would stay like that indefinitely. So I would ask that the city would maintain its word on those letters for those homeowners and what their commitment was there. I do live south of this property and where it is, and I noticed that you had Ivory Homes listed as the landowners of the 28 acres there. I think on the county records it still shows it belongs to the Andersons, and I know the Andersons have mentioned to me in the past that it was under contract, but they were waiting for the development of the road. And if we're waiting for the development of the connector road to go through for these properties and to make all that connection, when it's appropriate tonight, if you could respond to where the city is in relation to our moderate housing requirements imposed by the state, and how this particular subdivision will help us reach that, considering the timeline and timeframes for the development needed. If this were to be approved, how that even would impact with the timelines and whether that even helps or not. Understandably, the housing prices are high, and that's just the world we live in. But I mean, when I graduated college, I couldn't move into the neighborhood or buy the house that my parents lived in, and that's just the fact of life and where things go. So I'm sympathetic to that, but realistically, this is not the right area for what is needed to be done, especially when we look at other cities, like where Farmington is building out theirs next to, all the shops and the stores and everything else in the more commercial areas. If we look at Antelope Drive and how that's developed out, it's all in high throughways, it's access to all the, the gas stations and stores and everything along that way, and this is just not that place to support it. And if you drive up 200 or look down Main Street, there's a lot of other spaces or unused spaces where those could very well turn into housing to meet that moderate income home space. So that'd be my request is, keep the word that was provided to the city, to the homeowners over the years, and keep the zoning the way that we all bought into and have planned for.
Hi, my name is Sapientia, and I live right on the corner of Sunset and Shepherd. So we're probably the newest in our neighborhood. We've only been there since 2020. And when we drove in that area before we bought the property, the one thing that really drew us to the house was how it was very quiet. There was nobody walking, barely anybody walking in the middle of the day, and we have 2 young kids. And now that when you guys, before the road was basically constructed, before the roundabout was constructed, there was a sharp right to Sunset, which basically allowed people to slow down. Now there's just a roundabout that makes it a high-speed road. If you add any more houses in that area, then that road will basically just would basically just have more traffic and, based on the speed limit that nobody is following, it's just going to be just quite dangerous for our kids and other people who live in it. But like you said in your one of your first slide, maintaining the small town feel of Kaysville, and that was one thing that we were drawn to. We came from Salt Lake City, which is very high density. We moved to North Salt Lake up in Eaglewood. You'd think Eaglewood would be low density, but actually it's also moderate density because the houses are big, but still they're packed in together. And then we moved to Kaysville, and Kaysville basically provided us with that space. We love how we're close to our neighbors, but still very far. And we would like to maintain that as well. So hearing all these rezoning, where our neighbor across our streets sold their lot to Symphony Homes, and all of these other things, that just makes us concerned about of course, the value of our property. And our neighbors said it very well. We came here because, if you're offering $30,000, I guess, as a grant for people to live to live in these moderate income housing, how about our grant for anything that would devalue our property? So, and also, and I think basically that's it. So we've come to Kaysville. We love how it's pretty much quiet in our street. We are very concerned about a lot of traffic coming in with more houses being built around the area, and also, of course, our property value going down.
Hello, my name is Stephen Pedersen, and I live right at the corner of West Burton and Sunset. And this extension of Mare Drive here that Leroy Wilson talked about, as vehicles come out of that, they face into my property, which is right there. I've noticed a significant increase in traffic there with no development having taken place. And so traffic is certainly a concern, as well as the feeling of this rural environment, or mixed rural environment, that we bought into when we purchased that home. Enjoyed waking up in the morning and hearing cows lowing nearby, or seeing horses wander by. Certainly I would like to see that feel maintained in our area. And so I hope that you will decline this rezoning request. Perhaps there are other ways that it could be reconsidered with lesser density, but with this proposal, I request that you decline it. Thank you.
Push the little the circle button.
There it is.
There. Oh, yeah. Okay. Perfect. My name is Jamie Meerbrook, and I live on Mare Drive right there in that house. So when we moved here, I'm just going to speak to the feel of West Kaysville as well. All the streets are like horse names, and that's what kind of drew us to this neighborhood. Just the whole feel. I love hearing the cows and stuff in the morning. And then right at this barn right there, Becky here started, it's called Bridal of Hope, is that right? So it's for like anxiety for women and like younger girls. And they come and then they ride horses and do yoga and just kind of treat their anxiety that way. And that's right across from where this is supposed to be going in, and it's just not a good fit for the area of West Kaysville. Like I think someone else said that like the Main Street areas by like all the services and stuff would be a better fit than farther away from that. And also
The traffic, just with all the schools and stuff right there, it's already really, really bad. And just, it would just be worse. So I just wanted to speak to the feel of West Kaysville.
My name is Jackie Jones. Does that work? Okay, so I live right in this area right here. I am a developer builder that built those 3 homes right there. And as a person who did that, and it was about 2007 to 2011 that we did that. It was when Andy was here, when a lot of different things were happening in that area. However, one of the things that I was very aware of was to be very respectful of the zoning, the R120 that I was under at the time. And as a builder, you know, you do want to get the best bang for your buck. However, it was more important for me, because I knew I was also going to live there, was that I made sure that it was, it went with the neighbors around that area as well, and how important that was to me. And also working with the city at that time, how they expressed, now I realize that we're all a part of the urban sprawl. That's all gonna happen. And so, and we do have children, and we do have to, you know, do our very best for them. However, I think it almost does feel like it's either one thing or to the max of the other. And so I would hope that you would reconsider even R120 or something like that, where that's what we've had to abide by as builders and developers as well. So I hope that has some bearing, and I hope that you'll reconsider that. Thank you.
My name is Mike Jensen. Nice to see you. It's been a long time. I own the property across the street. Let me tell you a little story. I'm sorry if I get emotional. A little over 10 years ago, we lost a son. At the same time, the Covey family in Alpine lost a daughter. And my wife, who is too shy to speak today, and Sister Covey got together and started an equestrian, I won't call it therapy, but a program to teach young women the skills of the 7 habits in order for them to find hope. Tomorrow, or Monday, we will graduate 15 young girls and women from that facility. And the following week, almost 20 more will start. Every year, it has doubled or tripled. And it's a blessed environment because of the environment, where these young women can come and find peace and hope and get on a horse. I ask you to consider the first goal of the general plan, which is to preserve and protect Kaysville's small town atmosphere by limiting change in the functioning neighborhoods and district. Staff has presented to you that this is a functioning neighborhood the way it exists right now. This will make a drastic change. I've spoken with Brian. I'm friends with Brian. He and I have worked on that, keeping that dirt road passable for the last 20 years. And Brian, I asked you not to do this. I asked you not to do this. I understand that Brian's done with the horse community and the horse environment, but we are not. And I can speak to you of the value of teaching and training our young men and our young women in that environment. The resilience, the strength, the fortitude, the work habits. You look through Davis County, you look through Kaysville, and that environment is going away. My son's leaving next week for medical school, and I asked him if he would come back and live in Kaysville. He's grown up here, essentially his entire life. Not if this is what it is, was his response. I want what I had. That's what goal number 1 speaks to. That's your obligation and responsibility as commission members, planning commission members, to respect the voices that you've heard. to go after goal number 1 first and foremost. Worry about goal number 8 and the state's requirements for you to have moderate housing. I encourage you to do the math. These homes will have to sell for $250,000 given today's interest rates and the prevailing incomes and statutes. I'll close by asking, just like this commission and the city council determined before, there's so much change that's going to be happening in this environment. I understand it, I anticipate it, I expect it. But respectfully, can we sit down and address the entire area? Just like was requested by multi-story, multi-family apartment dwellings, it was tabled. And there's a reason. There's other developers, there's other landowners. We need to understand what everyone's needs are and preserve the heritage and the feeling that has made Kaysville what it is. Thank you.
My name is Mark True. I live right here on 1750 South. I won't repeat what other people have said much better than I could. Just to reiterate a few things to this group. I don't begrudge those who have property and want to sell that property. I mean, and the landowner, I don't just want to disrespect him and his family in any way. Mike Jensen's last point is, I think, one of the most important ones. We talked earlier about what the intent is of the property, but none of that really matters. And this gentleman's intent doesn't matter. All that matters tonight is a decision about a rezoning, which is wholly disconnected from any sort of development agreement or any sort of intent from subsequent landowners. And I think that's the biggest problem and concern I have. I think it's the biggest problem that other committees such as yourselves have faced in the past 40 years, and I do not envy the job you have to do today, which has to take on challenges and problems as a result of the failure of planning in the past. Let's not repeat the same mistake. I think that last point of saying, we don't know what's going to happen with this property. There's a bit of a fight going on right now over this gentleman's property and his desire to rezone. Without having a broader perspective of what's going on, none of us really knows what's going to happen here. And how can we plan for and preserve the small town feel of Kaysville and actually ensure that this is developed appropriately without a little more perspective? I love living here. I grew up here, went to Davis High School. I don't want to pretend to be oblivious to the fact that things are going to change and that this is going to be developed. Let's just do it more responsibly. I would encourage, I don't advocate for the permanent tabling of a decision, but for taking this decision and making it in context with the other adjacent property owners so we can have an honest, open, and good conversation about what's going to be done with this property that does preserve our city and does allow these property owners to benefit as well by benefiting from their investments. That would be my strong recommendation and preference for this group, that we just do it responsibly. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lori Nacy. I live on the property that is next door to the Lisbys that abuts the property of Mr. Carling. So this directly impacts me and my family. We've lived in our home for about 25 years, and so we've seen a lot of growth, good growth, and good neighbors over the years. I'm not opposed to growth by any means. What I am opposed to is the change that will change the feel, like many have spoke about. It will definitely change the feel that we have. In my home, I have horses, and behind me, for all the years that we've lived there, there's mostly been horses behind us as well. So to have 27 units crammed behind my fence in 2.8 acres greatly impacts me. And I think that we've talked a lot about moderate-priced homes. I would really like to know what the moderate price of those homes were. I was probably one of the very few that received this letter in the mail. Many of my neighbors knew nothing about what was going on, and I think that's wrong, by the way. I think this road is a dead-end road, and people, didn't see what was going on unless you have a reason to drive down that road, but I digress there. But anyway, I would just like to say that even though we're looking at moderately priced homes, like what is a moderately priced home if you really are trying to get to a moderately priced home? I mean, even the homes on Station Park there on that road, I mean, they're well above median home price, let's be honest. And one of the things that the staff said is that the typical opposition topics that we get is what they've received in the emails. Well, the reason we receive those typical opposition topics is because this is our lives. This is where we live. We have lived in this area, myself personally, for 25 years. These fields that are being developed, these people don't live here. We have lived here. We have chose to live in the mosquito area where nobody else wanted to live. And that is our home. So I would ask respectfully for you to consider what is happening. We are on Sunset Drive. Someone else alluded to the fact that it's gotten really busy. It has. The Davis Corridor dumps off right there and right in front of my home. I can't even back out of my driveway anymore. That comes with growth, obviously. But if you drive down, and I'd invite you all to come, and I'll take you on a tour of that area. If you drive out there, you can see the opportunity that's there for redevelopment, for housing to come in there. And just like others have said, I think we really need to respectfully look at what is available and what may happen there. So I personally am oppositionally opposed to this rezone, and I hope that you'll think and take into consideration what the citizens of Kaysville have to say. Thank you.
Do we have any additional comments?
I'm Kurt Macy, Lori's husband. Lived there with her. I've got some issues with the way things are going. The property, let's see. Where we at? Okay, the property right here is Mr. Sheriff's property. I was around when that was trying to be developed into half-acre lots, and everybody threw an absolute fit about how small those were and how horrible a thing that would be for the community. And you guys denied it. You guys said, hell no, get the hell out of here. Not gonna let you do it. And the biggest opposition to it was Merrill did not want to put a road in here on 500 so that Brian could develop his land. That was the number one problem with it. Now, in all the communication here, to me, it stinks. I'm a negotiator, I do all kinds of things, and there's some things that stink. I feel like the presentation from the staff was very biased, very one-sided, was absolutely focused on a lot of things that we don't know. Okay, the state has rules for you guys, for us to come into. Where do we sit on those? Are we okay on them? Hey, we've got to have 3 of these, we've got to have 4 of these. Where do we sit? Is this going to make or break us getting funds, or are we just fine? And that's just throwing stuff out there trying to make you vote for something that's really not, doesn't make any sense. This area is rural. I get my hay out of that field, sometimes out of that field, sometimes out of that field. I have horses on the property. So there are horses, my next door neighbor has horses. It's a community where it's set up there, and that's why people have moved here, is for the rural, for the types of things out here. It needs to stay. The reason people want to come to Kaysville is because they don't want to be in a high-density area. They don't want to be in Middle Salt Lake. They don't want to go in there. And if we continue to make it that way, we're not going to get what we're asking for. We're going to get people leaving. You know, so if I decided to leave, I'd knock down my house, I can put 20 units on my property, and I just have a high-density apartment complex there. And I would try to get Section 8, because I love when the state sends me checks to the ones I already own. You know, I'm worried about not getting the checks, and nobody can do anything about it. It would be a horrible thing for the community, a horrible thing for the area. We need to focus on keeping Kaysville. There's a reason people live here. There's people, we are elite. We're not, people can take offense, we're not Lakeland. We're more elitist. We're more, you know, we feel like we're here for a reason. We have a different kind of community. We want to maintain that. This completely destroys that. I could get behind half acres, you know, probably third acres. I'd kick and scream a little. But I just feel like the bribing, you know, hey, we'll give you guys $30,000 if you approve us. She comes out here and has a little conversation with him in the middle of public discussions. Wow. I negotiate all the time, and it smells to me. It just smells like there's stuff going on that shouldn't be going on. This should be wide open, public open. Thank you.
My name is Alexis Larson, and I recently graduated from college and moved back here with my husband to live with my parents, who live on the south end of Sunset Drive. And I used to live here before that for about a decade when they first moved into the area. And being a younger family who's right in the mud with this whole nationwide housing crisis, it may come as a surprise that I oppose this rezoning. Because no family wants to be packed in like sardines into tiny townhomes, wall to wall with your neighbors, rubbing shoulders to the point of aggravation. But because there's no other housing options being built in single family homes with enough space, that's what we're relegated to as a younger family. That's the only thing that's being offered, and so we're all being forced into these tiny units throughout every city in Utah. And I don't think that that's the solution. We don't want these tiny homes. We want to have space to grow. We want to have places we can stretch our arms out and not be smacking our neighbors. So I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments?
Madam Chair, we got a number of emails in support of doing a rezone like this for the purposes of more affordable housing. I'm just wondering if anybody came tonight and if they're willing to speak or not, but they may not have come tonight.
My children were all afraid.
Afraid to come?
So if there are no additional comments, we will close the public hearing. So does...
Probably a good next step is to go back to the developer and have the applicant respond to any public hearing comments.
Mr. Carling, will you come to the podium again and respond to any comments or questions that the commissioners might have for you?
Just curious if you have any response to some of the things that have been presented here.
Yes, I understand everyone's concerns, especially around the unknown. Yes, a rezone, and if you recommend it to the city council, we'll have more discussions there. I think that the city could further protect those concerns when there are some unknowns. And I'm one that would comply. I didn't have to offer up what a concept was, but with my ability and some accurate aerial maps, I would show this would be the highest density if the road was done the way it was proposed. If somebody came in with an overlay, PRUD, they would get more density, and I think it would not be as desirable for most of the community. But I do find it interesting how, if it's true that you did get emails, comments, whatever, in support, almost all of us that are here, we have nice, average third-acre size homes. I could have my children bring in all of their collective friends over the last 20 years of graduating from Davis High School, but they don't live anywhere near us. There are no places to live in Kaysville that are affordable. I don't know what the cost of this will be. I don't know how much it would cost to put a sewer line in. I don't know if the sewer district is going to allow a gravity-fed sewer line to go into that main trunk line that's on 550. I don't know if the city is going to give that land up to whoever has a lot deeper pockets than I do. It's got to be Ivory Homes or Symphony. There's no way that I can develop this unless I piggyback off of some other company like Ivory or Symphony. And they're going to be the ones that are going to really determine what eventually is going to be the flavor in here. What I'm asking for is simply a rezone. I've thrown out a concept. I'm not asking for, a condition to have a development agreement. I'm not prepared. I'm not wealthy to be able to develop this property at this point. I could go to the bank, hopefully at some point in the future, get a loan, and have them appropriately say, this would be appropriate. I would be paying into the big pockets to reimburse on this pioneering agreement. Nothing will happen here until greater shoes than I could ever fill will make it happen. My desire is to think differently about this area. Yes, the neighbors will be, in their mind, negatively impacted. I don't believe for a second anyone's value will go down. I believe we are going to continue to see exponential growth in values and taxes. I would consider, I'll scratch that. I would hope that you would consider what has been offered as a rezone with the intent in the future of allowing some additional options to be available in Kaysville. This does not affect very many people. You can see, yes, it's agricultural, but I still think it's America. I'm still a property owner. I own more than just this property and other homes in Kaysville, and I think property owners ought to also be able to do what they should rightly be considered to do with their property. And if you find this something positive, I would hope for your consideration. If you think it's terribly negative, you'll have to vote your conscience. But the staff did recommend for approval, and the city council would still decide. But I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. I just think that we need to think differently about a lot of people that aren't here voicing their opinion that would love to live in Kaysville that have no idea we are having this meeting.
Were there any other questions or comments from staff or the commissioners for Mr. Carling?
Thank you.
I do have a question for the staff, and I don't know if you can answer this right off the bat, Melinda. But the situation with the road that's been talked about, do we know what the situation is there? Do you know what our city engineer is looking or thinking about for the development of the roads in that area?
Sure. So let me just first start by saying what I asked Mr. Carling when I approached him was whether or not he ever received a letter from the city stating the city would never allow 550 West to be improved. He indicated he did not. Judge that for what you will. The conversations we've had with the city attorney and the city engineer and public works director 550 West is intended to be a significant local collector, which means a 66-foot right-of-way. Earlier I said 65, apologies, it's 66 feet of right-of-way. The city, in its desire to not spend money that we didn't need to, and the way developments work is as a property is developed, the developer pays for the road, for the utilities to be extended. We do not bear that cost. And it has been a very intentional process over the years, is my understanding, that we were going to give access to properties down in this area, but not have it be a public right-of-way and not do the road improvements on the cost of the city. So my belief is that as this develops, Ivory Homes, Symphony Homes, Mr. Carling, if that is what happens here this evening, or rather the evening that the City Council hears this, they will be responsible for putting that road in, and it'll be 66 foot right of way. We have a city code that indicates what our major streets plan are, and it lists that Angel Street and Sunset are collector streets as well. So they are designed to meet capacity of neighborhood collector streets as vehicles and traffic comes out of the neighborhoods. So I'm not sure, I did not ask them about, if this is part of Angel Street, my guess is that Connector Road is also a 66-foot right-of-way, is that they have improved that as they've done the road construction the last year plus. So I'm not entirely confident on that, though.
My guess is that the city is probably going to have to bear some cost for 550 West, because really you can only make a property owner and a developer responsible for the impact that they're creating. Yep. And if that's a collector road that's to serve a bigger area, they're not creating all that impact. Mm-hmm. So we can only ask them to fund equivalent to what their impact is. So my guess is the city is going to have to come up with some money, some amount of money, in order to develop that road as a collector road, if that's what their intent is. But that's to be determined, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, but the intent is to have development bear as much as that cost as possible, and as we can have that, because we don't feel our taxpayers should pay those costs for the development.
Well, Madam Chair, I'm happy to kick off some of this discussion, if you like. This is always one of the tough ones. And I mean, I've been in the land use game for 40 plus years and have done this in a lot of places. And I can pretty much tell you that every time, usually we hear that people don't want to see change. And that's, I think, just human nature. People don't want to see change. But as we continue to grow and we have more people, it's going to change. Things are going to change, whether we want them to or not. And so the question is, how is it going to change? And as you look at the area, there's a style of development that has occurred there. And, my guess is that that a lot of the people who live there now, when their development was proposed before they moved in, that there were others that came out and said, we don't want that. We don't want it to change.
Amen, there was.
And yeah, and yet it's gone forward, and you're all pretty good people now. You're there, and it's a good neighborhood. And my guess is that's what'll happen with the remainder of the property as well. It's not just a guess; it's pretty much in my experience, that things will work out pretty well. We do face a situation now that is radically different from what the situation was when much of this property developed initially. We talked about the affordable housing and the cost of housing and the ability of young people to be able to come back into the city and live. Even just folks that would normally come into an area like this. I think one of the statistics that I saw recently was that accounting for inflation and for other things, to get into a moderate home, a moderate income home, it takes 2.5 times the amount of income now than it did 10 or 15 years ago. And people's wages have not increased 2.5 times. So it's much more difficult to get into a home these days than it was back then. And that may, you know, and then of course, Melinda has talked about the requirements that we have at the state level for moderate income housing. The intent there is to have cities consider what they can do to help make that happen. And so that doesn't mean necessarily it has to be everywhere in the city, but Kaysville only has, what, probably 200-300 acres left to develop. That's all we've got. And if we're going to make any dent in the moderate income housing, you know, we've got to do it somewhere, and we've got to do it probably in some places that we might otherwise not so much consider. So I have some sympathy towards the request for the development here. Now, having said that, I do look at the general plan, and Melinda's pointed out that this area has been designated for single-family homes. And, you know, I mean, as Melinda also pointed out, general plans in the state of Utah are advisory. They're not mandatory. So really, the council could do something different than what the plan states. But as a planner, I always say, well, let's do what the plan says. Why else did we do the plan? And so if that's the case, if we have an area here that's designated for single-family homes, I would say if we can, we ought to look at doing single-family homes. But I think because of the circumstances that I've just talked about, I think maybe we need to look at doing smaller lots. Now, people will say, oh, that's going to radically change the character of the neighborhood. I can tell you it really doesn't. Nope. You're still going to have people living in homes, and, you know, you can get some pretty expensive homes on small lots. Somebody mentioned that they're, you know, like in Eaglewood, you have small lots, but huge homes. That's not the goal, really, if we're talking about getting moderate income priced homes. But land costs are a big part of what drives the cost of housing. There's a lot of other factors too, but land costs are a big part of it. And so the smaller we can get the lots, the more likely we are to make it more affordable. So that's where I'm coming from. That's what I'm thinking at this point. And I just throw that out there as to kind of kick off the discussion with my fellow commissioners here.
Wilf, I appreciate what you said. I'm very much in agreement with every single thing you said, and I'll add a few of my own points. The reason land is so expensive is because they're not making any more of it. You know, that old saying. We have an unlimited ability to reproduce as human beings, but we can't just go to the store and buy a can of land and pour it out and create more space for ourselves. And in Utah, we are in a particularly difficult spot because we have a geography that hems us in between the mountains and the lake. Kansas City is pretty flat. Denver's got nothing for hundreds of miles to the east of it. Salt Lake City is very unique, and we don't have the ability to keep growing the way we've been growing. And we cannot look at the future the way we've looked at it in the past. That time is over. And every time we build inefficient use of our land is a mistake that cannot be retrieved. And I think the obligation upon us as a planning commission is to plan, and that's to look at, not today, but look at what's coming tomorrow, 5 years, 10 years down the road. Because if we look back 5, 10, 20 years ago, life was a lot different just even 10, 20 years ago. I'll throw my I've been here in Kaysville forever card out. I built a home up here 27 years ago and I live just around the corner from this. This is my neighborhood. I've driven past your home probably thousands of times on Sunset Lane and hated every single trip on it as it got cut again and again and again for development. But I live just a short distance from here, and when I built my home for 8 years, we had nothing but cows in our backyard and alfalfa. And we loved the lowing of the cows, and we loved the kids riding the snowmobiles and their motorcycles in the wintertime at the church farm behind our house. But at the same time, you know, and we had 6 proposals for Legacy Highway to go through our home, buy our home, tear out our neighbors, tear out our house. We lived in constant fear of Legacy Highway. And I gotta tell you, all those people that moved in next to me, behind me, are some of the best friends I have on earth. Those people I go to church with, that I see in the street every day, they're my best friends. They come over for dinner. Ultimately, what happens is that we're afraid of change. And Wilf and I have had the privilege or the punishment to work in the public sector for decades on this exact issue. And I can promise you this, the change that is coming is never going to have the negative impact that you think it will. I've worked for multiple cities. I've gone back to every single hot button development that I ever worked on and just chuckled at the statements that people made about how, you know, life as we know it is over if this twin home subdivision goes in, if XYZ development goes in. You know, it just isn't true. And so I think if we want to think about the future carefully and think about our kids, my 3 kids got into townhomes about 3 years ago, right before interest rates went crazy and prices went crazy. All 3 got into homes, and I'm just so grateful they did, because none of my 3 kids right now could afford the home that they're in if they had to go buy it now. And the statistics every day in the Tribune, the Deseret News, there's article after article is being written on this issue. And if we need to get up to speed on this stuff, we can't do what we've done. So enough for me. I'll just say this. I am very much in favor of higher density development anywhere we can get it in Kaysville. We are the poster child for a city that does not allow anything but well-to-do people who live in big homes. We have 8% of our development land in the city is in multiple family. 8%. That means 92% of our city is in single-family detached homes. The average city in Utah has about 75-25. We have never carried our fair share, and we cannot look at ourselves as a city any longer as an island. We are not an island. We are interconnected with each other, and if every city does what Kaysville does, we create a nightmare for the coming generations. So I am in favor of rezoning. I'm not a fan of this particular rezone. If this were closer, if this were farther down, closer to the roundabout, I don't know. It just seems like we should get denser the closer we get to the access point to West Davis. I'm with Wilf. I think that single-family detached homes are preferable, and Wilf is absolutely correct. We must build smaller lot sizes. There are countless people that approached me during my career working for a city that said, can't I get a building lot of 5,000 to 6,000 square feet? Can't I get one of 3,500, 4,000 square feet? And they were all in their 60s, 70s, and 80s saying, cities will not allow you to build small lots. It's R1, 8, or 10, or nothing. And this is an opportunity to build small lots. And that's where the market wants to go, and cities are saying no. And this is the time I think we need to say yes to small lot, single family. But I think these lots are difficult at 3,000. And that's why I asked the applicant earlier about, or I asked Melinda about development agreement being able to vary setbacks. When you apply standard setbacks in zoning, city zoning, to small lots, you kill the ability to build a decent home on it. If you require a 30-foot front yard on a 3,000 square foot lot, that's insane. We should be building 10, 12, 15 foot front yards. I've done it myself. I've seen it over and over and over again. We've got to get away from these rigid rules that make it so that small lots don't work. So I would encourage the city to look at in any future development agreement to reduce that front yard. Give people that flexibility and allow the buildings to move with flexible setbacks, which is another issue. But I'm in favor of rezoning. I just don't like this R4. I just think those lots are a little too small. And I can't believe I'm saying that, but I think 4,000, I saw one development in Holiday that was 4,000 that worked, but 3,000 to me doesn't work unless you can do really, really flexible setbacks. So.
Do any of the other commissioners have any comments or questions?
I think it's a really tough spot, for this kind of lifestyle that people have become accustomed to. And I also see that Kaysville is landlocked, right? We don't have the property to be able to put in some of more of these developments. However, I'm on the front line of that, and I see what these first-time home owners are paying, and second-time owners and third-time owners, and it's not ideal. It's not ideal. With Wilf, I think and with Paul, the rezone density on this one might not fit in, because it seems to be a little bit landlocked right there. A little bit floating in the middle, and it sounds like possibly with these bigger developers that are coming in there, that they're going to be working with some of those lines, putting that density towards however you said it with the lots. But Kaysville really, really needs to have a little bit more modest opportunities, even for people who live here and just want to continue living here, but just need a little bit more, just a little more space somewhere, right? So that's what I have to say there.
I'll make a few comments here, and we do appreciate all the comments. We read all the emails. Part of our job is to look at the city as a whole. We go through this with other parts of the city, and this is very possibly the least densely populated part of the city. And so this kind of building does exist in Kaysville, and the areas that it exists in feels like Kaysville. It is still the same city. It still is kind of small town. And we do have to look at, we do have to look at all the different factors. To enforce, I'm very hesitant, again, I do believe in the right of a landowner to apply to do with their land what is legal, and this is a zoning change. They have the right to apply for that. I wish I could tell all my neighbors what to do with their yards and their land. And the city could deny this application. That is still also within the legal process. But to have allowed so many other parcels of land, most recently, particularly in West Kaysville, to develop into suburbs, into housing that do not resemble the fields that they were at all, and then to say, well, no, we're running out. Now it's time to start just saying, well, sorry, you were last in line. So I am in favor of allowing the applicant to have their day, to go to the city council and have that opportunity to discuss that. I like the fact that most of our different zoning types have very similar setbacks and height requirements and things like that. So, it's not going to stand out, in a very different way. And I don't presume that this will reassure any of you here, but, we tend to be very protective of our own neighborhoods. The concerns are there. I feel like that the applicant has the right, and I don't see a big enough problem to deny them the ability to go to the city council and have that opportunity. And like I said, a lot of Kaysville is very different from this part of Kaysville, and it's still Kaysville. It feels very much like Kaysville, and I agree that I just don't see it ruining things. I mean, it can ruin a view. It can ruin something you've had for a long time. I've had that too, where a field behind my house that was full of pheasants is now houses, and I understand it. But in my role as a commissioner and here looking at the entire city, I feel like we should allow this to go to the city council and have that looked at. I am also would probably prefer something a little more less dense, an R2 or something like that. But that's the applicant's prerogative to decide what they want to apply for. So
I would say, also looking at the city as a whole, I feel like we have had pushback in other parts of the city that feel like they're bearing bigger brunt, and it's come up, well, what about West Kaysville? I would love to see density in West Kaysville is kind of, the response. But we are only allowed, to see what comes before us. My property, I live in West Kaysville in a development that was strongly opposed by its neighbors and vilified and thought it would be horrific and scary and awful. And has turned out to be just a lovely community of small, teeny little lot homes. And nobody's sad about it. I think it benefits the community as a whole to have diversity in housing options and, economic levels in all of the areas of the city. I don't particularly buy into, an elitist, protection group, but I think that it's, you can't, from this table, we can't ensure what the development looks like at the end, that's kind of pinned on the architects and the developers, but I think there's potential to have a really nice development, and it's very close to the West Davis corridor and that access to, I think it deserves to be seen by the city council. I think city council should have the opportunity to look at that. We really do have very few opportunities to get a little bit more density and a little bit, just a slight, a different, some variety in housing options. There's just so few in Kaysville, so very few, and so I would hate to miss an opportunity.
So I'm more in agreement with Wilf on the fact that, yes, all of this area is going to change. Just like everywhere else in Kaysville has been developed, this area eventually, whether it's next year or 5 years or 10 years down the road, it is going to be developed. A lot of those fields, unless you guys want to get together and buy them to keep them where they are in their pristine feel, are most likely going to end up housing. But I agree with Wilf in the fact that I think we need to stay with the single-family homes, and I think that this is a little too intense of development for this part if we wanted to look at higher density closer to the Collector Road, the Angel Street connector, or whatever. But I do believe that it will be eventually higher density. I just don't know that R4 is what is appropriate here, so.
Well, the question, when you were under the impression that this was going to be like single-family homes on the small lots, does our ordinance allow for that? Like to have 4 detached units on a 12,000 square foot lot? Because as I look at the ordinance, it just says that a single-family dwelling has to have 8,000 square feet, and then a 4-unit has to have 12,000 square feet. Can you detach them?
Well, it does allow for single family. Hold on, I have to.
So it sounds like they could detach them, but it would decrease the.
Yes, they can be
Yeah.
detached.
They'd be smaller homes.
With the
I
setbacks.
had some of the same questions, honestly.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if maybe it could be done through the development agreement. And you know, I know Mr. Carling has said that he's not ready to do a development agreement, and I get that, but I mean, a couple of our commissioners have said they're not really all that ready to go with the R4, and I think part of that may be because we don't know exactly what's going to be built there. And in order to do that, in order to get the kind of thing that we're talking about, it seems like we would want a development agreement, especially when you look back at the history of the council in the last little while. For a lot of the rezones, they are requiring a development agreement. And if that were the case, I think my guess is they would ask for that here as well. And if that's the case, I'm wondering if we could do like the lot layout that he has, but have them as detached units. If not, then I would say, you know, go with some other zone that allows for smaller lots, R18, maybe even R16, something like that.
My thoughts through this as staff that hopes to understand the council and where they're at with things, and really has been that I didn't see this going forward, at least through the council, being approved without some type of a development agreement. That has been conversations that I have had with, I've spoken with at least one council member about that. And that has been, there was an application last year for RM, and one of the big concerns in the public opposition with that was that we don't know what we're getting. We want to, you know, like this many could be allowed, but we don't know what we're getting. And that application ended up being withdrawn. But I would not honestly see a path through city council to approval without some type of a development agreement, ensuring that they will get something that they are comfortable with. And whether that is what Mr. Carling has proposed or something less dense. Again, the conversations that I had with Mr. Carling over the last couple months is he's come in and spoken with me about the application before submitting and after submitting. I was very much under the impression that these would be single-family detached. And so, you know, that I think the council would be more comfortable with detached in this area.
Now, I will say this, building detached units is going to be more expensive than building attached. So it does not help with the cost to do that. So Chair, Mr. Carling's right. I don't know if you want to allow him to speak, or it's up to you.
I will allow you to come to the podium again to reply to that.
Sorry to interrupt. I've spent quite a lot of time looking at the code. So I'm terribly sorry if I gave you any kind of misinterpretation, but this is how I look at the code, and I've combed through it a lot. We have R16, R8, 10, 12, and up, and the others. When we look at anything that is different of the RM, the R4, the R2, and the R18, the R18 and the R2 will accomplish the same thing with a conditional use permit, with the R18 allowing a conditional twin home. They are one and the same. The R2 and the R18, they both require a minimum 8,000 square foot lot. So when we're talking about a 3,000 square foot lot, there is no such thing in the city code allowing for a 3,000 square foot lot. I don't think there ever will be. So when we talk about the 3,000 square feet, that is the divisible 12,000 square foot lot with 4 different structures on there. You've got front, you've got rear setbacks on everything that we're talking about. The only time we ever get below a 30-foot front setback is when you go down to the R18, the R6, or the R4, RM, or R2. So that's a little bit of the challenge that you all have, and you guys might want to look at future meetings and how you want to address that. But the R16 does not allow a twin home, not even as a conditional. You guys approved the one that was across the old Kaysville garden, right across the street west of the high school. They wanted to put in RM, I believe, of some sort. The neighbors threw a fit. They went in and got R18 with a conditional use, which you couldn't really deny without just normal conditions. They got more density than the RM was going to allow. So you guys take what I've offered. If a development agreement would be required, have that as maybe a condition. Maybe with some lengthy time to allow that to happen. And I'm reasonable. I don't want to be a bad neighbor. But the code, I think if you delve into the code, my application would never make sense to have individual R1s. That would never have been calculated with that kind of square footage. It was always intended to be that R4. Thank you.
So that may be worth taking a look at. You know, I just in circumstance, I look at, and as Mr. Carling said, we probably never allow for 3,000 square foot lots in Kaysville. It's been interesting to see what's been happening around the country, this whole issue of zoning reform, as they call it. And in a number of states, at the state legislative level, they are now stipulating that communities must allow for 2 units, sometimes 3, sometimes 4 units on any residential lot, any residential lot. And then along with that, many states now are also stipulating that cities cannot require minimum lot sizes larger than, in some cases, down to as small as 3,000 square feet. And if you think, you know, that can't happen in Utah, we had a bill in the legislature this last session that would have stipulated that no community in the state of Utah could require any zones that would allow for a minimum lot size of larger than 5, was it 5 or 8? I think it was.
It was like 5,200
yeah, I think it was 5,200 square feet, right. So, you know, what that tells me is it's coming.
Well, and Wilf, I think we need to speak the truth here about who we are. Utah is in the top 10 most urban states in the nation. We're number 8, 7 or 8. That means all Utahns, almost all Utahns live on a little tiny strip of ground. We have 85,000 square miles, and 9 out of 10 Utahns live on less than 1,000 square miles of land. We're super urbanized. Well, there's a reason for that. We live where there's water. We live where we have canyons. You know, we live where we have these verdant valleys. You can't just go out by Snowville and start building communities of thousands of people. And people don't seem to forget that we are already urban, and we can't avoid that. We can't continue to build as if we have all this land. We don't have it. And we also have more kids at an earlier age than anywhere else in the country. So if we want to look at the problem, just look at ourselves. We make kids, we make them early, we make them more than other states. We have to build on smaller lots. We have to. We just don't have the land and the water.
Maybe to try to bring this to a resolution here for tonight. I know Mr. Carling said he wanted an up or down vote tonight. I don't know that I'm ready to do that. I think Mr. Carling himself just threw out some options, some alternatives that I'm thinking, oh, that's worth looking at. And so I think I would like to take the opportunity to take a little bit of time and look at some of those other options of the other zones like he mentioned, and see if something would work. And then come back and see if we can craft a recommendation. So I guess I would make a motion that we table this application to our next meeting. We're not going to do it indefinitely.
Could we, sorry,
Yeah.
could we please, I am leaving the country for 2 weeks at the end of the month.
Oh, all right.
I will not be here. I would prefer to be here for that next meeting.
Yes, I would agree. You need to be here.
So if we could do the first planning commission meeting in August, which
That'd be fine.
should be the 9th? That's why I'm pulling up my
I think
calendar.
that's right.
So that then would be, sorry, the 8th.
8th.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wilf, can I suggest we use the word continue
Oh,
instead of
okay,
table?
yes, continue. All
Yeah.
right. That's
To the
that's a
next
much better
available
way.
meeting.
Good suggestion, Paul. So I would make a motion that we continue this item to our August 8th meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Those in favor of making this contingent to the August 8th meeting? Start with Aaron.
Aye.
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 Okay. It's the car wash. So I need to, because we are almost to 10 o'clock, I need to make a motion to extend the meeting past 10 PM so we can finish our agenda.
Oh, so moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. You're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting if you'd like.
We're going to talk car washes.
Well, first we have the meeting minutes.
Yeah.
So next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our June 13th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Did anyone have any changes or suggestions to those meeting minutes?
Which one are you on?
So
The
we're,
June 13th?
June 13th.
okay.
Yeah, item number 8. We jumped over 7. That's,
Oh, sorry. I did jump over 7, sorry.
If you want to go to the minutes, so last time I abstained because I was not at the June 13
did
meeting,
we-
so I will just not be voting on that.
I was also not here, so I will have to abstain.
Did we skip number 7?
Yes, we did on accident. I will circle
Oh, you're
back
coming
there in a
back. Okay,
sec.
sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll come back.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for June 13th, 2024.
Second?
All those in favor of approving the minutes for June 13th, 2024?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We will circle back to item 7 since I accidentally skipped that. Consideration of establishing a temporary land use regulation as allowed by State Code 109A504 for appropriate car wash locations and regulatory standards.
I will make this as quick as possible. We've had some discussions about car washes. In fact, we changed our code last year to not allow car washes east of I-15 on Main Street and 200 North. The car wash that did go in, Mr. Car Wash, abutted residential properties, and it has been a very difficult thing for the neighbors over there. And typically, car washes are not compatible with residential uses. So we would like to have a recommendation tonight from the council to establish a temporary land use regulation that then we would get on the next council meeting agenda to put in place a 180-day pause, which would give staff time to research best practices and look at appropriate regulations for car washes. Well, maybe not most, but a lot of communities, larger communities that have more resources than we do would have an entire chapter on car washes. We don't. And that proved to be a big problem for the residents over here in our residential town site, our historic area. So we would like to take a look. And one of the things I can tell you right now, we would recommend when we come back to the Planning Commission with a text amendment is that we would not allow residential uses to abut up to a car wash. So that would limit some of the locations that they could go, but protect our residents and their homes. And there were several other things that we'd like to take a look at. So we had a very brief discussion, I think, at our last Planning Commission meeting about this, that there has been other locations proposed. In fact, Ann took a call this week with the property that is still in Come and Go's name out on 200 North at the West Davis corridor, and they asked if they could put a car wash in. And I would not like to live through Westgate 2.0. And I would like to be able to better protect our residents. And so this will give us the opportunity to ensure that we have adequate time to go through that process.
So just to summarize, Melinda, our current ordinance does not allow for auto-oriented businesses along properties that front on 200 North and on Main Street. And that's it. That's as far as we've gone.
Correct.
So this addition, or the change that we're talking about, is saying, and if it abuts residential properties, is that right?
Yes.
Directly abut.
And again, based on our conversations and the issues with Mr. Car Wash, and they did make some accommodations and tried to mitigate the impacts that business had on the existing residences, but at the end, there's only so much that they can do. So yes, that would be the recommendation. So there are commercial locations on 200 North that are adjacent to a residential zone, a residential use, and we would like to protect those residents from impacts that, the car washes are a thing, right? They're a big thing for Mindy. And she loves a clean car. But we shouldn't have that at the expense of people who have to live day in and day out. And it was, it was kind of heart-wrenching to watch our residents over here go through what they were going through. And at the end, we don't have any lighting standards. That was an issue in addition to the noise.
Noise attenuation.
And I mean, in fact, in general, right, like, could we just put a TLUR on our entire zoning code? I know we can't, but that said, right, like, we don't have a lot of regulations in place that we should, but, glad that we now have some staff here who has, I think, the capacity to really help do some of those research tasks and come up with some recommendations that will of course, bring to the Planning Commission and then the City Council. This is something the mayor is supportive of, and I know Councilmember Hunt is supportive of this. So is staff. So we, Jason, our city manager, was kind enough to take the lead point on the issues that we had with our neighbors over here so that I could focus on other things. And it's really, it was a detrimental impact to our residents. And we want commercial business, but in the appropriate locations. So I have had conversations with other property owners that are saying, yeah, we're still having these car wash franchises or whatever chains be down my door and wanting to put them in locations that just really don't make sense.
Okay. So, we need to make a motion then to establish a temporary land use regulation tonight, which would prohibit car washes from being located adjacent to residential properties.
Or do we just need to put a hold?
Yeah, so I talked with our city attorney
Yeah.
today, and we would like that recommendation. And then normally we don't turn things around quickly. If this was normal circumstance, it would go to City Council August 1st, but I will not be here, and we want to get this established as quickly as possible. So if that is the recommendation of the Planning Commission tonight, I'll be working on a staff report in the morning to put in the City Council packet with your recommendation.
Okay.
So my question is it to just not allow it next to a residential lot, or is it to hold on car washes while we are putting into place possible other stipulations, standards, and
Sure.
area uses?
So this would press pause on any application for any car wash in the city.
Yeah.
So,
Anywhere in the city.
yeah, that would be
Okay.
the intent.
All right.
For 6 months, right?
For
No more than 6 months.
no more than 180 days. This really wasn't something that I felt we could take on in the last 6 months, right? We had the staffing deficiency, retirement, and so it feels like good timing now to address some of these. And then again, there have been conversations that have come up of locations of car washes that just wouldn't be good for our residents.
Okay. You ready for a motion?
Is there any other comments or questions?
I'd like to make a motion. I motion that we as a planning commission make a recommendation to the city council on agenda item number 7, which is a recommendation to consider establishment of a temporary land use regulation as allowed by the state to declare a study for appropriate car wash locations and regulatory standards for these land uses throughout Kaysville City, per the staff report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You guys sound so good at 10:20. So forceful.
Okay, let's move back to item 9, approval of the meeting minutes from the June 27th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or comments for those meeting minutes? Nope.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Do we have, did you say second? Did he say second?
I think so.
Okay. I just heard that comment. Okay, I will abstain as I was not that meeting either, but all those in favor
Aye.
Aye.
of approving those meeting minutes? Okay, are there other matters for the Planning Commission reports? Comments?
15 minutes more of items to discuss. I'm obviously teasing. So I think really the only thing I wanted to relate to the Planning Commission tonight, apart from thank you for your discussion, that was a tough item. So, but we will have on the City Council agenda next week to appoint Katie Ellis to our Planning Commission as a permanent member, as all of you are. And she has come actually 4 times to our meetings in the last few months because she just wants to be involved. And so she heard last meeting when I said that we had a vacancy, and she immediately applied. And so we're excited to have her join us. And she actually did an internship with us a few years back from law school. She worked with Nick and is currently serving as an assistant city attorney for Ogden. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, well, we do have a need to have a meeting on July 25th. So we know for sure right now we have a conditional use permit that needs to be processed. So, and I have full confidence in my staff that they can work through that. But we'll keep text amendments and rezones off of that. You know, I don't. Well, I'm trying to be sensitive to having staff that's been here for 3 weeks and, you know, pace ourselves a little. Although from what I've seen, I think she could do that as well.
Trial by fire.
Yeah. Well, in fact, you know, I appreciate Mr. Carling's patience with this application, because when we were discussing timing of it, I suggested that we wait until after we had hired the new planner so that they could get a good kind of indoctrination to how things work with things like this. And I think as Mr. Carling was very well aware that this would be a controversial rezone. And so, yeah, we're hitting the ground running with that, so.
This was tame.
Yes, it was.
Pretty tame.
It was.
People were very polite.
We wait for the parking lot to clear.
Oh, I did that.
We're going to escort you out.
Anything else on the? Anything else on the agenda or items?
No, I did get an email from APA the other day about registration is open for the fall conference down in Provo. So I think somewhere in my email drafts, I have that to send out to the planning commissioners and see if there's availability for you to attend that.
You've got the league conference too coming up in early September. Which
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, and they will send out information on that. They have their planners day that's usually the Thursday of their conference, and you can register just for a single day. So they always have great information, and it's good. You know, a lot of planning commissioners attend that day, and it's good for, I think, planning commission members to kind of see, like, it is mostly mayors and councils that attend, but a lot of planning commissioners, and it is good for you all to hear some of the same things and attend the presentations that the council is going to as well.
I wanted to, or meant to, kind of report back on the spring conference, which was excellent. And there was a keynote on affordable housing. You recall it? I thought was just fantastic. Was hoping to find a link to a recording of that. Do you know where we might find that, Wilf?
Was it the Land Use Institute conference? Or was it the
APA?
Oh, it was APA.
APA in Cedar City.
Should be on the APA website, but
and it
they're
was,
revamping all of their stuff right now. I'll look for it.
Yeah,
I'll
I
let you know.
hadn't found it, but I haven't looked recently, so I thought it would be good to share with the commission.
Steve
It was,
Ball-
yeah,
Steve
it was,
Baldrick that-
it
In fact-
was, one of Governor Cox's,
Yeah, Steve
yeah,
Waldron.
probably,
Mhm.
yeah, very, very good.
In fact, there is an affordable housing summit that the Urban Land
Yeah, that's
Institute is
right.
putting on.
Yeah, in August.
We'll send that out as well.
I'm presenting at that one,
Okay,
so it should be kind of fun.
okay, yeah, so,
We're gonna be presenting on NIMBYism,
well,
Planner's Guide to NIMBYism.
I heard a term the other day that I had not heard before, but it was NIM2,
NIM2?
not in my term of office.
Oh.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what, that happens too, so. You know, one of the things that, I mean, I'll tell you, I really struggled writing this staff report, which is why you all did not receive it Friday. There was a very tough staff report to write. Kind of had to take my personal feelings out, because that's my job, right? To look at the professional side of things and the context of that. So, you know, you have tough jobs, we have tough jobs, the council's gonna have a tough job when this goes to them. And but one of the things, and I explained this to Ann as we've been, you know, I've been meshing her and this moderate income housing stuff. And, you know, the state has made it very clear that they will not accept public clamor as a reason for denying a rezone. And that, I mean, I have it in writing from the state. And I think,
For denying a rezone?
yes, I have it in writing from the state that they will not accept public opposition as a valid reason for denying a rezone that would fit with moderate income housing.
That's interesting. Wow, that's kind of an extension of, I mean, it was always true for administrative issues, but never for legislative.
Well, that's why I'm saying, right, that they really view this as more of a contractual
Yeah.
agreement between us and them. And so.
I'd like to see your letter.
I will send it. I will send it out to all of you. In fact,
might
last year I
blog on
sent
that.
it out to the,
Wasn't there research, Will, that they did 7, 8 years ago? They said they had never found a court that overturned a rezone in Utah.
Yeah,
Ever.
pretty much.
Ever.
Yeah, pretty
Not
much.
one time. That's
well,
changing.
well, I mean,
findings
I don't
from
think the
rezone.
court would overturn that, but the state will find us as non-compliant.
Yeah, legislature can say, okay,
That's interesting.
better have findings if
And,
you're gonna deny.
you know, it's a huge frustration for, I think, most staff in the state, that they're telling us that we should not.
Well, this crisis is not imagined.
No, it's not.
And if you're one of those that doesn't have a shelter,
It's up to you.
Well, that's part of the difficulty of having a plan that even as recent as 2022, the landscape is shifting so much right now that it's hard to look at the plan and say, well, this is what we want to do, but it's changed so much and is changing under our feet, you know?
That's true, that's.
Yeah, but
By saying you have to have a plan, and you have to show how you're implementing your plan, it is kind of becoming mandatory.
Well,
situation.
it was, I mean, I asked very clear questions and got very clear answers back. And I have
Interesting.
huge concerns about it because the
I
state
think
code
there'd be some
doesn't
big
say.
legal concerns.
Well,
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
you know what, from a planning perspective though, Wilf, you and I know darn well that when they first came out with these moderate income housing requirements, there was no teeth.
No.
There was no penalty.
That's
So
right.
the cities just went, in your ear, state.
Yep.
And they did that even after they were getting feedback from the city saying, we're not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
And then when they came with the first wave of penalties, they still went, eh. And so the state now is gonna say, you know what, we're not kidding.
Yeah.
We're gonna come after you with fangs bared. You better find a way to get housing in your city. Because every city can't just say, not in my backyard, not mine here, not here.
But that's really an overturning of a whole legal precedent. So that's gonna be interesting.
Well, I will send that out. I did attempt last year when I gathered the information, I sent it out to representatives, the UCMA president and the UCMA liaison for the league, and I sent it to the league president and didn't get a response.
On the letter that you got? Or just?
Yeah, so what I did was and this is what I'll send you, but I copied and pasted my questions in, the state's response, and my concerns, which
And
were,
nobody
this isn't in
replied.
code. Nobody replied.
I can get your reply. I think I can get some replies.
I'll send it out.
Okay.
It was,
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I really would.
it was a disappointing lack of response.
Yeah.
Well, I thought your staff report was excellent. I
Well,
really did, because I could feel your hesitancy on some of those issues, but I didn't go down to the bottom and read it. As I went, I was going, okay, way to go. I did. I read and I was just waiting for her
Yeah.
to lean one way or the other, and
Yeah.
when she did, I went, I actually did this. I actually gave a thumbs up to your report. I'm like, way to go.
that last 10% of writing the staff report, honestly, it took me probably probably about 8 hours
Yeah.
to just write, like, language matters, and that's why I said staff is compelled.
Yep,
I feel compelled
yep.
because of this modern housing stuff
Yeah.
to offer that recommendation.
You know another good, here's some language I've used dozens of times when I was faced with a really difficult staff report. I would say staff cannot in good conscience recommend such and such or against. Because I just was like, I'm sorry, this may make sense to you guys, but I cannot say that this is okay. Can't.
We appreciate how hard it is.
You guys do a good job. And welcome.
All right, my battery's dying on my laptop.
Oh.
Did we adjourn?
No, make a motion to adjourn.
Did you have something else that you?
So moved.
Okay. Do we have do we have to make a motion?
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, Mike
So
just did
moved.
it.
Okay. This meeting is officially adjourned.
My comment would be, I wish that there was something in between the R4 and the R18.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But we have the R2, right?
That's where a lot of cities
Yeah.